I'm sorry to have to tell you this. Your husband didn't make it. The suspect took his own life before he could name whoever ordered it, so we may never know who was behind it.
Why? Why did you kill my husband? Answer me, Quincy Noha.
Fine, kill me then, and bring him back. She tilted back her head and drank the vial dry, standing there in the falling snow. When she opened her eyes, Charlotte had returned to the very day it all began. At the Noha family table, Duke Dominic gave his order without a flicker of warmth. Get married, Charlotte. He wanted her to secure Duke Edward before the man could bind himself to another house. Quincy, her brother, went rigid. Father, this is far too sudden. Charlotte only just woke from her collapse a week ago. Dominic brushed it aside. In his world, there was no time to spare for weakness. The Emperor had recently stripped the family of several coastal trading rights. Edward's abrupt search for a wife was nothing but a move by the crown to apply pressure. If Noha could tie itself to Edward by marriage, the Emperor would no longer be able to touch them. So the match had to happen, whatever the cost. Quincy tried to argue again. Hold your tongue, Quincy. Being the heir does not give you the right to talk back to the head of this house. The heir pulled tight as a drawn string. Dominic's demand truly was absurd. Alfonso Linus Edward, cousin to the reigning emperor, head of an ancient and honored house, holder of an immense fortune drawn from the temple, and a man as cold as winter stone. Ordering someone like that to marry the daughter of a house branded as villains sounded like a joke. Then at the height of the tension, a calm voice spoke. Yes, father, I'll marry him. Charlotte agreed so easily that Quincy could only stare. Doing whatever profited the family had always been the Noha way. Dominic looked openly pleased. He smirked and pressed her. You're certain you can have Edward eating out of your hand? Charlotte smiled. Of course, that will be the easy part. It was not an empty boast, because in her last life, she had brought that arrogant man to his knees to kiss her feet. She lifted a handkerchief to her mouth and broke into a violent fit of coughing. The white cloth came away stained red. The blood was worse every day. She had to move quickly. Every minute mattered now. The secret was this. Charlotte had turned back time. Remembering her father's smug expression, she let out a quiet, bitter laugh. He still assumed she would obey the way she always had. But this life was different. Her only goal now was to save Alfonso. In her last life, she had walked into that marriage and carried a regret that never left her. On the most important day of her life, as she slid the ring onto his finger, he had looked at her with eyes as cold as death itself. Even married to you, I will never love you. That hollow, dishonest marriage became the great tragedy of her life, only because she had truly fallen in love with the man who despised her. Alfonso had refused Noha's proposals again and again, partly for her family's reputation, but mostly because of her. To the world, Charlotte was a villainess, her father's obedient puppet. To force the marriage through, she had used the ugliest methods she could find: traps, rumors, and the deliberate ruin of every other match he might have made. Cornered by his own family's troubles, Alfonso was forced into a hasty wedding. That was how she got him. The cold marriage dragged on, until Alfonso fell for someone else, Adeline Laveros. Where Charlotte was all sharp edges and thorns, Adeline had a bright, open smile. Beside her, Alfonso's face came alive. He looked like a man who was truly living. It was a softness he had never shown Charlotte, and never would. Then one day she could not hold it in any longer. Do you love her? What came back was a look cold enough to reach the bone. What do you want now? If I say yes, will you go spread rumors about her? She has nothing to do with any of this. Leave her alone. Charlotte understood then bitterly just how much that girl meant to him. Our marriage may exist only on paper, but it is still a promise between two houses. Do you love her enough to break all of it? Charlotte. He said her name, and then delivered a sentence like a verdict. I am begging you, do not make me any more miserable than I already am. Watching his lonely, worn figure walk away, she decided to let go. She would ask for a divorce, only because she wanted him happy more than she wanted anything for herself. She sat down and wrote a letter, facing her own feelings honestly for the first time in her life. Then she set it on fire herself, hoping to burn the feeling along with it. Love to her was a tragedy. No one stays happy holding on to something that only destroys them. But the fire in her did not go out, it only burned hotter. Until one day, Charlotte's world came apart completely. The first man who ever taught her what love was, and she had lost him for good. and the one who took him from her was her own family. Charlotte went straight to Quincy, her half-brother, now the head of House Noha. Alfonso was never a threat worth removing. When did he ever move against this family? You, of all people. My own brother. You were always on my side. I wrote it plainly in that letter that I loved Alfonso. Confusion crossed Quincy's face. You told me you wanted a divorce. What are you talking about? So it was a misunderstanding, and the cold cruelty of the family had done the rest. To the head of Noha, a divorce meant endless complications, alimony chief among them. Killing him was simpler. That is how Noha does things. You know that better than anyone, don't you? She looked at her own blood with pure hatred. Drop dead, Quincy. For the first time in her life, Charlotte hated the blood running through her own veins. The name of villainess, the pride in Noha blood she had once worshipped, now only made her sick with herself. The thing she had been proudest of turned out to be the blade that killed the man she loved. Charlotte used magic to seal Alfonso's body. She walked alone through blizzards, wandering the continent for one thin thread of hope, to bring him back. Wait for me a little longer, Alfonso. People pointed and called her mad. Her body failed, her mind cracked, and still she refused to stop. Her eyes blurred with tears, but her resolve never moved. I will save you. Then a voice spoke out of the silence. Raising the dead comes at a very steep price, my lady. The figure in the hood and the sun-shaped mask gave her a cold warning. Stronger magic demands more fuel. Unless it is the life of someone driven by an overwhelming desire, the right will not take. If you fear death, go home. Charlotte only smiled faintly. So what you need is simply my life, is that all? If it brings Alfonso back, then this life of mine will finally have been worth something. He named the one condition that mattered. The right runs on your desire itself. Depending on what that desire is, the result may turn out to be the exact opposite of what you hoped for. What is your desire? Alfonso's happiness. Nothing more. Very well. But whatever the outcome, the right lasts 1 year at most. If your desire is not fulfilled in that time, all of it becomes meaningless. She accepted it calmly. The sorcerer remarked that she seemed to place no value at all on her own life. He could not have known. Everyone values their life. It was only that some things were worth trading it for. If she could bring him back, she wanted one chance to say what she had never dared say. And she wanted to watch him live happily beside the woman he truly loved. She owed him an apology for forcing him into that marriage. And she owed him thanks because however awful she had been, he had always done his duty as a husband. The sorcerer handed her a small vial that glowed violet in the dark. Drink it, and the rite begins. Holding it, she smiled at peace. It's all right that I can't dream of a future with you. As long as you are alive, as long as you are happy. The glass vial dropped into the cold snow. My lady, are you awake? The frantic voice pulled Charlotte back. She opened her eyes and looked around, dazed. Why did this room feel so familiar? This was her old bedroom in the Noha estate. The maid asked anxiously whether she was hurt, saying she had just tumbled down the stairs. Seeing her still staring blankly at her own hands, the maid decided she must be exhausted from the endless tea parties the temple had been holding, and moved to fetch a doctor. At the words temple tea party, Charlotte's heart skipped. Those parties had happened long, long before her wedding. Tears spilled over. She covered her face, unable to believe it. The wish she had paid for with her life had come true. She was back. Back to before she married Alfonso. Standing at a sunlit window, she pressed her hand to the cold glass. She had brought that man back into the world. But the fact that the sacrifice was still standing here alive meant her desire had not yet been fulfilled. 1 year. That was all she had. In that year, she had to make Alfonso happy. Because if she failed, time would snap back to where it began, and he would die all over again. Thinking of him made her chest ache. She understood now why he never smiled in her last life. He had been carrying far too much. Cousin to the reigning emperor, the youngest and most gifted head house Edward had ever had, a war hero of the empire with victory after victory to his name. But that very glory was the blade that drove him toward his death. His loyalty and his triumphs on the battlefield had handed the crown absolute power. And once the emperor was strong enough, he stripped Noha of its trading rights. That was the root of everything, the reason her father used every dirty method he had to force Alfonso to marry her. Remembering her father's calculating face as he handed down the order, Charlotte gave a thin smile. Of course, father. I know exactly what I have to do. But this time it would not be for House Noha. It would be for his happiness. She knew precisely who could put a real smile on that cold man's face. Adeline Laveris. Knowing the woman he truly loved, she would bring the two of them together herself. A hard fit of coughing hit her and she swayed on her feet. She got the handkerchief up in time. And when she opened her hand, the white cloth was soaked through with fresh blood. In her last life, her body had been perfectly healthy, without a single symptom. A side effect of the rite, there was no other explanation. Her face was bloodless, but her eyes hardened. She would not let this failing body get in her way. Sylvia panicked and moved to call a doctor. Charlotte stopped her at once. Don't! Have the carriage prepared instead, Sylvia. From the moment she swallowed that vial, the line between living and dying had stopped meaning anything to her. The only thing she feared now was giving up her life and still failing to save him. Sylvia called back softly, asking where she meant to go. She already had her opening move, to Count Olivia's house. Inside a carriage rolling toward the same city, Princess Sophia, the Emperor's younger sister, would not stop teasing Alfonso about his coming marriage. She insisted Count Olivia must have been walking on air for 3 days straight. Who on earth would turn down the head of House Edward? Alfonso was not only the Emperor's cousin, he was the Empire's newest war hero, undefeated in the field, the most sought-after man in the capital. Alfonso only sighed. Enough, Sophia. Nothing has been formally discussed yet. He had never cared for any of those glittering titles. Sophia pouted. You ignored the subject of marriage for 10 years. Why the sudden rush now? People change. This has nothing to do with you. All you're good at is criticizing. Sophia was still visibly disappointed. House Olivia was respectable enough, but nowhere near Edward. She started listing off the daughters of other great houses, all of them long since settled, and then turned sour. That a house that doesn't know its place, like Noha, would dare send you a proposal. Alfonso cut her off coldly. Stop it, Sophia, that is enough. I declined Noha politely, on the grounds that arrangements had already been made. So you have no reason to fret about it or make a scene. Sophia changed the subject and asked, curious, whether he had met Count Olivia's daughter yet. He said he intended to meet her at the Count's party that very day. Sophia brightened at that and wished him well, hoping to gain a friend she could visit at the ducal estate, where there was no one her own age at all. Alfonso smiled faintly. Don't worry, it will be fine. Nothing can possibly go wrong. Reality dealt that confidence a brutal blow. In the sunlit garden of the Olivia estate, Lady Layla Olivia, his future betrothed, stood sobbing in front of another man named Ethan. I have to marry the Duke of Edward, it's what my father wants. I can't let you go, Layla, I need you. Tears streaming, she begged him not to make it any harder than it already was. Watching his future bride swear undying love to another man, the ordinarily imposing Duke was left with exactly one thought. This is a disaster. Rewind a little. Before that small catastrophe, Count Olivia's party had been going smoothly, right up until the whispers started and eyes began flicking toward the door, leaving the air strangely stiff. Sophia nudged her brother's arm. Doesn't something feel off to you? Count Olivia came hurrying over, sweating, and bent almost double apologizing for his absence. He claimed an emergency, something about a rat nearly starting a fire in the kitchen. Alfonso said it was no trouble and went straight to the point. More importantly, where is Lady Layla? The Count hurried to explain that he had been too busy to attend to his daughter. Sensing the proposal was going well, he offered to bring Layla out so the two could meet naturally. And so he led Alfonso into the garden to find her, only to walk in on Layla wrapped in another man's arms. Alfonso could only exhale slowly, pressing his fingers to his temple. The man of the century, they called him, and here he was. I can't be selfish enough to force someone who doesn't want me. This marriage never happened as far as I'm concerned. Seeing her father appear with Alfonso, Layla shoved Ethan away in a panic. Count Olivia went white and could not form a word. Layla, Ethan, what in the world is going on here? Ethan stepped in front of her. My lord, we truly love each other. I ask your permission to marry her. The Count's mouth fell open, his eyes rolling white. What? I raised you, an orphan off the street, and this is how you... Oh, good heavens. He never finished. He clutched his chest and collapsed on the spot. Layla and Ethan rushed to catch him. A while later, Princess Sophia came hurrying in to find her brother. "There you are, why didn't you come back? Is the Count all right?" The Count fainted from shock, but the doctor says there's nothing serious. Sophia let out a breath, then frowned again. What kind of day is this? The hall felt strange earlier, too. Just before we arrived, an uninvited guest turned up. An uninvited guest? Who could throw a whole party into chaos like that? Who else? Sophia's lip curled in disgust. It's that infamous villainess of House Noha, Charlotte Noha. That shameless woman actually dared to show her face here. Sitting at her leisure in a private room, Charlotte listened to the rumors spreading fast through the house. Count Olivia collapsed? How is he now? Sylvia reported back. They say he's come around. It was only shock. Charlotte let out a small breath of relief. The one who had pulled every string in this little play was, of course, her. That morning, the moment she set foot on the Olivia estate, the master of the house had blocked her path. "Get out. You can't walk into my home without an invitation." Charlotte answered with a contemptuous little smile. "Even a rat can come and go from the Olivia kitchen as it pleases, and yet you'd throw a person out over a missing invitation? Slander?" Charlotte's lips curved. "I say it because I just watched a rat run loose through your house. I only worry it might chew my dress." The remark, with everything it implied, drained the color from the Count's face. Charlotte had used her own reputation as a weapon to stir the party into chaos. She made a scene on purpose, so the whole hall would be busy whispering about her outrageous behavior. Everyone knew the villainess of House Noha would do anything to get what she wanted. And while every eye in the room was fixed on her, she quietly struck up a conversation with Ethan, Layla's lover. She feigned sympathy for his situation, then let slip the news of the meeting arranged between Layla and Alfonso. Such an innocent girl, bound to an arranged marriage. What a shame. "My lady, how do you know about that?" Charlotte smiled, meaning everything and nothing. "Haven't you heard the rumors about me? In any case, if you don't move quickly, you'll lose her for good." She played the part of a kind soul and pointed him toward the garden where Layla was waiting. Everything unfolded exactly as she had written it. In her last life, the two of them had run away together. And after Count Olivia collapsed, his struggle with death became the favorite gossip of high society for months. This time, Charlotte had stepped in early enough. She gave the lovers their chance and quietly destroyed Alfonso's engagement in the same stroke. Charlotte smiled, satisfied. The first obstacle was cleared. Now for the next step. Bringing Alfonso and Adeline together, the woman he truly loved. And she had to be quick. That night, the great hall of House Obuni glittered brighter than usual. Guests filled every corner, music and laughter braided through the air. On the second-floor balcony, Jacqueline Obuni, the formidable head of the house, was trying to calm her younger sister, Devona. "You arranged a marriage with the Duke of Edward without asking me a single question. I don't want to marry yet." Jacqueline sighed and fanned herself with peacock feathers. "Do you know how many women dream of marrying into Edward? Marriage isn't something you get to simply want or not want." Devona hesitated, gripping her skirt. "I have goals that matter more to me than marriage." Jacqueline's gaze sharpened. "You're dragging your feet over that perfume shop, aren't you? I've poured everything I have into those bottles. A little more time and I'll make it work. Trust me just this once." Jacqueline did not budge. "Enough, Devona. I gave you a year, and you have nothing to show for that shop. If the business failed, you marry. That was our agreement." Devona lowered her head. Her sister's words cut straight through her pride. Jacqueline softened her tone, though not her position. "After you're married, keep making perfume as a hobby if you like. You're young, you want to try everything. But every woman settles down in the end. After I'm married, when exactly? After the children come or after they've grown? Will a duke's wife be allowed to run a business and neglect the household in a house that old and proud? I've given my whole life to perfume. I can't just walk away." Devona turned and fled down the staircase, tears running freely down her lovely face. She knew her sister was right. High society cared only about famous names. Her nameless little bottles, however beautiful they smelled, drew no one's eye. "If only more people knew about my perfume." Just then a faint scent drifted past her, refined and utterly distinctive. Devona stopped short and looked around. Across the hall, a cluster of ladies had gathered around a woman with brilliant red hair. "Oh, this fragrance is extraordinary. Where did you buy it?" The red-haired woman smiled. "A small shop in an alley off 4th Street. I don't know who blends it, but whoever they are, they're gifted. Devona stood frozen, her eyes locked on the bottle in that woman's hand. It was hers. She had made it herself. And the woman holding it was Charlotte Noha. Notorious she may have been, but Charlotte was also a style icon the young ladies of the capital adored. Anything she wore, from a silver hairpin to a ball gown, became a trend overnight. Devona held her breath and listened. The crowd would not stop marveling over the bottle in Charlotte's hand. Charlotte stroked the glass and smiled. The bottle itself was rather plain, so I decorated it myself. I've been meaning to tell the shopkeeper that a little investment in the packaging would do wonders for them. Every word struck Devona like a current running through her. Her heart pounded. Why was Charlotte saying all this so loudly? Did she know who owned the shop? Impossible. Only Devona, her assistant, and her sister Jacqueline knew. But Charlotte's manner confirmed it. She knew exactly, and she was deliberately handing Devona the key to her own success. Devona spun around and ran to find her sister. She seized Jacqueline's hands, her eyes blazing with hope. Cancel the engagement. Cancel it now. I found the way to make the shop a success inside a month. While Devona was celebrating her escape over at the Edouard ducal estate, Louis, third son of House Barthélemy, was doubled over laughing until tears came. Turned down because she's busy with a perfume business. Forgive me, Your Grace, but I never imagined you'd be rejected for a reason this funny. The aide Serge reminded him to show his master some respect, though Serge himself could hardly keep a straight face at the Duke's remarkable run of romantic misfortune. First he caught his betrothed meeting a lover in secret. Then he was turned down over a perfume shop. It was genuinely surprising that a woman as shrewd as Jacqueline would choose her sister's passion over a prestigious marriage. Unlike his flustered retainers, Alfonso was perfectly composed. He understood that for all her strength in business, Jacqueline was still a sister who loved her sister. Forcing a woman into a marriage she doesn't want would sit badly with me anyway. I respect her decision. I even bought this bottle to support her. He set a glittering glass vial on the table, its stopper decorated with a butterfly and small blue flowers. The smile died on Louis's lips as he recognized something. Wait, isn't this the Charlotte Noha perfume? They say it only became famous because Lady Charlotte wore it, and people started calling it by her name. Your Grace, you and Lady Noha seem to be tangled by fate. The name alone dropped the temperature in the room. Alfonso's eyes hardened. The coincidence was far too perfect to be a coincidence. He turned to his aide, voice cold and decisive. Serge. Our third proposal was to house Marvel, correct? Investigate everything about the Marquise and Lady Vivian, whether they have lovers, whether they're hiding anything. He would seal every gap, whatever it took, so the name Charlotte Noha could never reach into his life again. In front of her mirror, Charlotte ran a hand through her brilliant red hair. Everything was going beautifully. That was Alfonso's second broken engagement, which left exactly one target. Vivian Marvel, Sylvia reported in. From everything I could gather, Lady Vivian Marvel has no lover and no questionable dealings of any kind. Charlotte nodded slowly. Unlike Layla Olivia with her secret love, or Devona Obuni with her ambitions, Vivian Marvel was the model young noblewoman. A devoted reader, quiet, withdrawn, with no visible weakness to exploit. The one useful detail was that she had a maid who looked remarkably like her. To Charlotte, that perfection was simply a more interesting challenge. If there was no weakness, she would have to handle it personally. That night, Charlotte jolted awake, drenched in sweat, breathing hard. In the nightmare, Alfonso had fallen in front of her again, blood spreading across the ground. The loss closed around her exactly as it had in her last life. No, not this time. There was so little time left. Alfonso's bride had to be Madeleine Laveris, the woman he truly loved. If the two of them reached each other, engaged and married and happy, the death stalking him would be undone. Her eyes steadied. I'll do anything as long as Alfonso is happy. At the Marvel estate, a lavish party was underway. Alfonso stood quietly amid the crowd, carrying the effortless authority of the highest nobility. But behind that calm, his mind was in disarray. Your Grace, are you unwell? Alfonso exhaled. My head isn't where it should be tonight. Louis tried to comfort him. I know the engagement's weighing on you. Time is short, and the last attempts fell through. Alfonso said nothing. This marriage was never a private matter. It was a move House Edouard could not avoid making. Edward had given far too much to the Emperor's endless wars. The crown's power had never been more secure because of it, and in return the house had been bled dry. A young head who had spent his whole life on campaign, Alfonso had never consolidated his standing at home, and quiet resentment had been building among the vassals. Marrying into a powerful house was the only way to settle them, and the deadline for filing the premarital vow with the temple was barely 3 months away. Miss it, and he would have to wait another year. The risk was too great. Louis clenched his fists. The other knights may not grasp how tangled this is, but as the third son of House Barthélemy, I do. I'll stand with you. He pressed on, cheerful, but it'll go smoothly this time. You needn't worry. Alfonso answered, yes, very smoothly indeed. His gaze drifted across the crowd, perhaps too smoothly. A flash of brilliant red caught his eye. Charlotte Noha stood there, smiling graciously. Unlike the last 2 times, everything now seemed laid out far too plainly. House Marvel was about to announce the match. If Charlotte truly meant to destroy this engagement, this was her only chance. Why the frown, Your Grace? Enjoy the party, or shall we raise a glass to your coming marriage? Alfonso caught himself. Perhaps he was being paranoid. The rumors had certainly reached Charlotte's ears, but what could she possibly do now? It was already settled. He lifted a glass of red wine, and in that exact moment, a familiar voice carried across the hall. Good evening, Lady Marvel. Might I borrow a moment of your time? Alfonso turned sharply. Charlotte Noha was walking straight toward Vivian Marvel. Why Vivian Marvel? He pushed his glass into Louis's hands. Wait here. There's something I have to do. His eyes went cold as he tracked the red dress vanishing down the corridor. This was no accident. This time I will drag your scheme into the light, Charlotte Noha. Under a hazy moon in the empty garden, Charlotte folded her arms, her gaze fixed on the visibly nervous Vivian Marvel. Do you dislike me simply for bringing you out here? I thought we were having a rather pleasant conversation. The girl tried to hold her composure. Lady Noha, I meant nothing by it. Charlotte's lips curved. Oh dear. So what you mean is, I can't enjoy a conversation because I'm the villainess of House Noha. Is that it? The sharpness of it made the girl flinch. Contrary to first impressions of a cold, distant noblewoman, the person in front of her was frighteningly quick. Back in the hall, Charlotte had whispered into her ear, If you'd rather your secret stayed a secret, follow me. The girl had gone pale and followed without a word. I don't wish to oppose you, Lady Noha. I don't understand why you're doing this, but there must be some misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Charlotte's eyes glinted with mockery. About what, exactly? That you aren't the real Vivian? Or that Vivian is the one playing your maid? The girl's face went white, her eyes wide with fear. Charlotte pressed. Melia Ruin. The maid who has looked exactly like Lady Marvel since childhood. I noticed the two of you share the same build and the same face. Melia stammered a denial. You're accusing me over that alone? Of course not. I checked very carefully. Do you remember the poetry collection I mentioned earlier? Hymns of the Seasons. What does that collection have to do with anything? Nothing at all. Hymns of the Seasons is a book Vivian published 5 years ago. Charlotte recited it softly. Winter falls away, snowflakes drifting over the prayers of the magnolia. The hour the white foam of snow becomes food for butterflies. That is the opening line. If you were truly Vivian, you could give me the next. Melia stood rooted to the spot, shaking from head to foot. Charlotte sighed. The Vivian Marvel I know is a private person, yet tonight you were so outgoing I hardly recognized you. For a shy Vivian who loves books, marrying a duke would feel like a cage, so she wanted out, even if it meant trading places with you. Have I got any of it wrong? Melia hung her head, fists knotted in her skirt, tears beginning to fall. You're right, my lady never wanted a noble woman's life, and I wanted nothing else. Thanks to the Marquis Marvel, who always loved me like a daughter. Charlotte's gaze darkened. So you intended to deceive everyone and set your sights on the Duke of Edward? Melia broke into sobs. The Marquis and my lady did nothing wrong. It's all my fault. Please keep this secret. You brought me out here because you want something from me, don't you? I'll do anything, please. Charlotte spoke gently. I want exactly one thing. Her eyes bored into the girl. Break off the engagement with the Duke of Edward. Melia looked up, unable to believe her ears. A secret capable of sinking all of House Marvel. And the villainess of Noha was asking for something that simple? Charlotte stepped closer, unhurried. This party was meant to be Melia's formal debut under Vivian's name, her chance to make a good impression on high society. But Charlotte did not care in the least about a maid's circumstances or ambitions. Trade identities, get engaged to some other house, that's your affair. The only thing I care about is that the Edward match is dead. That silent pardon moved Melia to tears. She choked out the most sincere thanks of her life, to the very person she had thought was a threat. Charlotte thought to herself that going easy on someone had produced a better result than she expected. In her last life, a great writer named Melia would shake the literary world 3 years from now. She had only suspected Melia of ghostwriting for Vivian. She never imagined the two had been bold enough to trade lives outright. The third move had landed perfectly. Every obstacle was cleared. The next name on the list would be Adeline. Once Alfonso met Adeline and fell in love, the two of them would find real happiness, and the death shadowing him would loosen its grip. But imagining him smiling at another woman opened a wide, aching hollow in Charlotte's chest. When he finally found happiness, where would that leave her? She shook her head and pushed the weakness away. Her life had been counting down since the moment she drank that vial. Why dwell on it? The work was done. Time for the obstacle to disappear. But a few steps on, a low, cold voice spoke behind her. Charlotte Noha. She went rigid. That voice sent a sharp ache through her heart. Slowly, she turned. Out of the dark, Alfonso stood watching her, his eyes keen as a blade. She gripped her skirt and forced herself calm. She had dodged him every way she knew how, and still she was cornered. Charlotte managed a stiff smile and pretended not to know him. Your Grace, forgive me. As this is our first meeting, I'm still trying to place you. Alfonso's gaze cut straight through her. You've destroyed my engagements and caused no end of trouble, and now you intend to ignore the injured party? I truly have no idea what you're talking about. She shrugged and moved to walk past. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Alfonso stepped into her path. I heard your entire conversation with Melia. Eavesdropping on ladies. Hardly what the Empire's most eligible bachelor ought to be doing, is it? He did not waver. Instead, he calmly recited the lines of verse she had used to test Melia. Winter falls away, snowflakes drifting over the prayers of the magnolia. The hour the white foam of snow becomes food for butterflies. Those lines come from a work of House Noha, not from hymns of the seasons. Charlotte's tone went dry. A maid can be fooled, then. He almost smiled. You lie remarkably well. I'm genuinely impressed. Your script was so precise that if you hadn't recited that verse, the maid would never have been exposed. I know perfectly well you were behind Olivia and Obuni. Every broken engagement has your hand in it. Charlotte looked him in the eye. There was no trace of the contempt from her last life. Instead, there was a strange, clear understanding. She pressed her lips together. Because he doesn't understand a single thing about me. If she was caught, there was no point performing. Charlotte lifted her chin and admitted it. Yes, it was me, and what of it? Are you going to demand I never interfere in your engagements again? Alfonso frowned. No, that isn't enough. You destroyed every one of my engagements, so you will take responsibility for them. Charlotte's brows drew together. Fine. What do you want? It won't be difficult. It's what you and your family have wanted all along. He held her gaze unwavering. Marry me. Please consider it, Lady Charlotte. The Duke's convictions had always been clear enough. The cunning destroy themselves. The selfish ruin themselves, and the cruel drag everyone around them into the mud. It was precisely to avoid entanglement with treacherous people that he had turned down proposal after proposal. But that night, standing behind a hedge in the quiet garden, he had happened to overhear Charlotte and Melia. Melia had looked at her full of questions. I don't understand why you'd go this far just to break an engagement. Charlotte's expression had softened with something unspoken. I can't tell you the details, but let's say all of it is for love. For love? Melia's eyes had gone round. What, am I not permitted to love someone? Melia had waved her hands, embarrassed. No, that isn't what I meant. I only wondered who he was. And Charlotte's face had gentled at the thought of him. He's a good man, soft-hearted, kind by nature, everything I am not. Hearing something so plainly from the heart, Melia had said she must love him very much. Charlotte had laughed at herself. My family's orders are absolute. And she obeyed them by never marrying the man she loved, by wrecking her own engagement with her own hands, and by trying not to harm anyone else along the way. Back in the present, he murmured to himself, she would suit a 1-year contract marriage perfectly. Louis startled. Sorry, what was that? Alfonso brushed it off. Nothing. Louis hurried after him, face crumpled with worry. Your Grace, this has gotten out of hand. I assumed it would happen once. Now 3 engagements have collapsed in a row. Alfonso glanced back. Don't worry. The 4th will go smoothly. I have no intention of being refused a 4th time. Louis brightened. Right. Shall we move to the next name on the list? No, Alfonso said flatly. I already have a candidate. Louis flushed with astonishment. You're Your Grace, who has captured your heart? Stepping up into the carriage, Alfonso turned and said the name without inflection. Charlotte Noha. Louis's eyes went wide and he practically shouted, Noha? Your Grace, did I hear that correctly? Alfonso sighed. Settle down, let's go. Leaving Louis wailing in despair on the drive. The carriage rolled off into the night. Alfonso leaned back against the seat, hand at his chin. Proposing to a woman whose heart already belongs to someone else. She may well come to hate me. Back in that moment, the sudden proposal had left Charlotte reeling, her eyes wide. Wait, what did you just say? You shouldn't joke about things like this. Unfortunately, this is not a joke. Realizing the situation was slipping out of her control, Charlotte began to flounder. Then we have nothing more to discuss. You believe I ruined your engagements, so now you're making me answer for it? If it upset you, I apologize. I won't trouble you again. Alfonso did not let it go. I'm not blaming you. Aren't your family's orders absolute, or is it because you've fallen for someone else? Charlotte's whole body went taut. He really had heard all of it. I never imagined a man as high-born as the Duke of Edward would be polite enough to eavesdrop, and then say so to my face. She threw the words at him and turned to leave. I'll pretend you never proposed to me. And rest assured, I'll have nothing more to do with your engagements. Walking quickly back to her room, her heart hammered against her ribs. Why would Alfonso propose to her? All of this was supposed to end with his next engagement. He was supposed to meet Adeline, marry her, and live a happy life. Why was the old tragedy repeating itself? If Alfonso married her instead of Adeline, he would die again, and trading her life to turn back time would have meant nothing at all. Charlotte closed her fists, her eyes hardening. I have to stop this. To smother the proposal, the first thing was to keep it out of her father's sight. If he learned of it, he would force her to accept on the spot. But in a house as calculating as Noha, who had the standing to slip past that old fox? It was late. Charlotte walked briskly down the empty corridor, stopped at an ornate wooden door and knocked. The door opened. He smiled faintly. Well, this is a surprise. Coming to see me at this hour? It was Quincy Noha, the official heir, the legitimate son of Dominic Noha. In her last life, right up until Alfonso was murdered, Quincy had been the one person Charlotte loved and trusted without reservation. Her father had brought home no shortage of children by other women, but not one of them carried the cruelty of Noha the way Quincy did. The world called her the villainess of House Noha. They were wrong. The one pulling every string had always been this brother of hers. Quincy had taught her everything, and planted in her the belief that outside of him, no one would ever truly love her. If Alfonso had not died, she might have stayed blindfolded by that counterfeit affection forever. Standing in his study now, Charlotte watched him in silence. Quincy sighed and scolded her for hesitating over the Edward match. Charlotte, do you hear yourself? Marrying Edward is mandatory. It's for House Noha. He adjusted his tie and went on lightly. You accepted this marriage without a word of protest. Why the fuss now? If you dislike him, marry him, dispose of him, and remarry. Simple enough. Charlotte's brows drew together. So on top of villainous, I'd add husband killer to the list? Quincy smiled at her. Do you really care what those insects whisper? You have me and you have House Noha. She tightened her hands, her eyes cutting into him. That tea you give father, he loves it, says it dulls the pain. Do you know what I found in it? A poison that doesn't react to silver? Quincy's expression changed instantly. Stop. Charlotte, how do you know that? Watching genuine fear surface on the face of a man who thought himself the puppeteer, Charlotte smiled. How did she know? Quincy himself, in the last life, flush with triumph after poisoning Alfonso, had laid the secret out for her. He had told her, without a shred of remorse, that the poison that killed her husband was the same one shortening their father's life by the day. Charlotte spoke very softly, and every word sat against his throat like a knife. Don't worry. I have no intention of getting in the way of your plan. We're family, after all. You have me, and you have House Noha, which is why you'll help me keep Edward's proposal out of father's sight. Won't you, Quincy? Back at the Edward estate after the Marvel party, Louis hurriedly gathered the senior knights. Then he dropped a bombshell. Duke Alfonso intends to marry someone from House Noha. The room froze. What, House Noha? Louis dropped his head onto the table and moaned that the Duke must have made this insane decision because the Marvel engagement had fallen apart. Zin, the steadiest of the knights, spoke up. None of us would dare contradict his grace, would we? I'll follow his wishes. The rest of the knights swallowed their objections. However full of doubt they were, they would obey. When House Noha ignored the proposal letters one after another, the aide Serge went to deliver one in person. He had barely reached the gate of the Noha estate before the servants turned him away. I'm sorry, without an appointment you cannot see anyone. The guard's flat refusal left Serge holding his head in exasperation. A senior aide of the distinguished house of Edward, thrown out at another family's front door. Serge trudged away, wondering how on earth he would explain this to Alfonso, and whether the Duke truly had to marry a Noha. From an upper floor of the Noha estate, Charlotte quietly lifted the curtain and looked down at that retreating figure. Aide Serge Marceau. Memories of her last life came rushing back. When she first married into the cold Edward estate, surrounded by nothing but hostile stares, Serge was the only one who ever smiled at her kindly. Then the tragedy came. After Alfonso died, she lay unconscious for a week and could not attend her own husband's funeral. The misunderstandings piled up, and when she went mad trying to seal Alfonso's body so she could bring him back, it was that same kind aide who looked at her with tears and despair. The mistress has lost her mind. Serge turning his back that day landed a killing blow, forcing Charlotte to accept how completely alone she was in the world. Charlotte let the curtain fall. She smiled bitterly. It's enough. All of it is enough. Alfonso had about a month. She did not understand why he had proposed so suddenly, but she believed he would go back to pursuing the match with Adeline. Her task now was to finish her business with House Noha and then quietly wait for her own ending. Looking at her reflection, she wondered why she was making that face. Someone like her had no right to grieve. That night, Charlotte appeared at the Aloha family's party. Wine glass in hand, she gritted her teeth through Rohan Aloha's boasting. I don't mean to brag, but since you asked, my lady, hunting a marten is no small feat. And I brought one down with a single shot. Charlotte gave the smile society required, sighing inwardly, but she could not leave. These were her father's orders. Noha needed access to House Aloha, because according to her father's information, the elderly matriarch of Aloha held a legacy of the old dynasty. If that secret reached Emperor Benoit III and proved the crown's legitimacy, the temple and House Noha would fall overnight. Charlotte was here only as bait to prevent it. While Rohan talked on, her thoughts drifted to Alfonso. She wondered whether he and Adeline had met yet at the Lavaris party. In her memories of the last life, Alfonso really had been a good husband. Forced into a marriage he never wanted, to a wife as awful as she was, he still carried out every duty with perfect courtesy. Every month he sent her gifts of real value, silks, jewelry, rare treasures. At first she doubted his sincerity, decided it was all pretense, and burned the lot. But his patient kindness eventually made doubt impossible. Lady Noha, are you listening to me? Charlotte smiled brilliantly. Of course. Your story is fascinating. So fascinating I can hardly concentrate. At least at this party, she would not have to face Alfonso. She would nod along a little longer and slip away. But right then a wave of whispers rolled through the hall. Charlotte looked down from the second-floor balcony and her heart stopped. A tall, commanding figure stood among the nobility. Alfonso. Why was he here? He was supposed to be at the Lavaris party discussing the match with Adeline. Had something gone wrong with the plan? Seeing her sway, Rohan hurried over. Lady Noha, are you all right? Charlotte played exhausted. I'm not feeling well. Then let me take you somewhere to rest. That won't be necessary. I can manage. She had barely finished when her ankle turned and she nearly went down. Rohan caught her. Careful, my lady. It would be poor manners to let you walk off alone in this state. Would you make me out to be some brute with no chivalry at all? Charlotte's brows twitched. Rohan was always excessively attentive, and getting entangled with him only ever brought trouble. But today had been a genuinely bad day. Her ankle was throbbing, and refusing now would only cause a scene she did not need. She nodded. Very well, I'd appreciate the help. What mattered most now was avoiding Alfonso at all costs. Hide inside briefly, then out to the carriage and away. She only hoped the day's bad luck ended here. But across the hall, Alfonso was searching hard for that flash of red hair. Louis approached and bowed in apology. I'm sorry, Your Grace, the Noha carriage is still outside, but we can't find the lady anywhere. It's fine, I expected as much. His eyes darkened. Searching everywhere and finding nothing was clearly no accident. She hated him. He knew that. But she had promised not to interfere with his engagements again. So why go this far simply to avoid him? It brought back the meeting a few hours earlier at the Edward estate. Serge had just returned after being turned away by House Noha again. Our letters aren't being delivered and the head of Noha is absent. It seems no one there wishes to receive us. The knights and vassals in the room erupted. Noha had sent the proposal in the first place, and now they were shutting the Duke of Edward out at the gate. Through the anger, Louis gathered his courage and spoke. Forgive my impertinence, Your Grace, but I have to ask. Is there some particular reason you insist on marrying a Noha? They must be laughing at House Edward as we speak. I can't accept this. Please tell us why you have decided to marry someone from that family. Sophia burst into the room visibly stunned. Did I hear that correctly? You're chasing after a Noha? You are going to explain to me what is happening. Alfonso sighed and rubbed his temple. You heard correctly, Sophia. Not long ago, I proposed to Charlotte Noha. Sophia's voice rose. What? Why would you do that? It has nothing to do with you, so don't interfere. I'm not interfering. I'm worried about my hopelessly naive brother. Do you even know Charlotte Noha is involved with the heir of House Aloha? Alfonso stopped short. What? Rohan Aloha has been boasting nonstop about how close the two of them are. Sophia poured on more cold water. They're saying he means to confess to her at the Aloha party tonight. Noha has been investing heavily in that family, so instead of clinging to a Noha, find someone else. Alfonso stopped listening. Serge, when is the Aloha party? Tonight, Your Grace. We received an invitation. Sophia panicked. You're going to the Aloha party? You promised to attend the Laveris party with me. Alfonso rose, decided. If we leave early, we can manage both. Move quickly, there's still time. Ignoring Sophia's complaints, he hurried to the Aloha party, hoping to find Charlotte. But though he combed every corner of the hall, he could not find that red hair anywhere. His chest tightened. Why was she avoiding him this completely? For 10 years, victory after victory had strengthened the Emperor's hand, and weakened House Edward in the process. As its head, he was responsible for resolving that crisis through a political marriage. But what if the man Charlotte truly loved was the heir of House Aloha? His head throbbed. If his search for her was standing in the way of her love, then the two of them should at least talk about it properly. Lost in thought, he heard a sharp crack and then a voice full of contempt. Alfonso whipped around. Earlier, Rohan had guided Charlotte into an empty room. Once they were well away from the crowd, Charlotte withdrew her arm and set a firm distance between them. Thank you for the help, but it's only a slight sprain. Could you call my maid for me? Rohan's mouth curled and he moved closer. Wouldn't a gentleman's escort be better? I'll see you home. That won't be necessary. She stepped back, but Rohan clamped an arm around her waist and pulled her against him. His eyes were openly hungry. In exchange, would you consider seeing me? Charlotte shoved him off. Rohan blinked. Lady Noha, you came here with me because you like me too, didn't you? Her voice went to ice. I said from the beginning I wanted to walk alone. You were the one who insisted on helping. And you concluded I like you? That is entirely your own fantasy. The flat refusal struck straight at Rohan's pride. In a fit of rage and humiliation, he swung and slapped her hard across the face. The blow rocked her, her red hair spilling loose. You've been leading me on. You act innocent. But I know better. You seduced Lord Dietrich under the pretense of helping him, then threw him away and humiliated him. Didn't you? Charlotte slowly raised a hand to the red mark on her cheek and laughed under her breath. Leading you on? Me? Her sharp eyes drove into him. Her voice unhurried and thick with derision. Dietrich? That name brings back memories. He was just like you, an arrogant braggart. He said he'd kill himself if I refused to see him, so I generously agreed. And before long, he was crawling at my feet, sobbing for forgiveness. Rather funny, don't you think? Calmly, Charlotte began undoing the buttons of her white glove and drawing it off. Do you know how to strike someone properly? If you're using an open palm, you take off your glove and remove every piece of metal from your person. Otherwise... Before Rohan could react, she put her whole weight behind a slap that snapped his head sideways. It hurts a great deal. Charlotte raised the sharp object she had been hiding behind her back, and something clamped around her wrist in midair. She looked up, eyes wide. That's enough. Lady Noha, the low voice came from directly behind her. Rohan, clutching his face on the floor, seized his chance and scrambled up to accuse her. Your Grace, you've come at the perfect moment. This vicious woman... Shut your mouth, Rohan Aloa. A dark cloud settled over Alfonso's face, his eyes fixed on Rohan. I heard all of it. You believe you have the right to strike a woman because she refused you? Have you no shame left at all? Rohan blanched and could not get a word out. If I hear one whisper about today, I will not stay quiet. Under the weight of the Duke's presence, Rohan retreated without daring another sound. With the man dealt with, Alfonso spoke. So you've been avoiding me this whole time to handle creatures like that on your own. Charlotte looked away. If you heard me at the Marvel estate, then you know my family's orders are absolute. So avoiding my proposal was also on your family's orders?
That was my own decision. I told you already, my heart belongs to someone. And it certainly isn't that fool.
Slowly, he lifted his hand and pressed a warm handkerchief to the red mark on her cheek. The unexpected gentleness made her heart stumble. Lady Noha, I came here tonight to propose to you again. Charlotte stared at him. Even knowing I love another man? It's precisely because I know. He met her eyes. Charlotte Noha, enter into a 1-year contract marriage with me. She looked at him, wary. A contract marriage? Exactly as you heard. We marry for 1 year, then divorce. And naturally, there would be nothing between us of an actual marriage. Charlotte frowned. I don't see why I would do that, least of all with someone who has refused my family's proposals over and over. Aren't you under enormous pressure from your family? Taking the Edward name would free you from Noha's control entirely, and the settlement after 1 year would be a fortune. When the contract ends, you'd be free to marry the man you love. Charlotte gripped her skirt. Weighed honestly, 1 year as a wife on paper in exchange for freedom and a fortune was a gift falling out of the sky. But she did not believe this arrogant duke had come up with something that accommodating on his own. Whose idea was this, your vassal's? It was mine. You haven't discussed this with anyone? I can't share something this private with anyone except the woman I'm proposing to. The honesty of it made her heart trip. She stared at him. He was as severe, as unbending as ever. So why did he suddenly feel like a stranger? The contempt his eyes had always held for her was gone entirely. Alfonso folded his arms. To be clear, I have no particularly high opinion of you. Charlotte blinked. You genuinely say that to the woman you've just proposed to? I'm only being honest. Haven't you destroyed my engagements one after another? I won't deny it. I'm not a good person. Wicked would be the accurate word. Alfonso nodded along, cunning, shameless, and perfectly willing to use violence. You do remember you just proposed to that person, don't you? A proposal and an assessment of character are entirely separate matters. I used to think you weren't worth my attention. I've changed my mind. I think you can solve a problem of mine. A problem? What problem besides the wedding? Something I can't tell anyone outside my family. If you accept, I'll tell you. Charlotte was caught. In her last life, she had never once heard of Alfonso having any other trouble. She had believed that bringing him and Adeline together would make him happy and safe. But if she refused now, what would become of this hidden problem? Seeing her waver, Alfonso softened. If it troubles you, I won't press. It's only a proposal. Give me your answer when you've decided. Charlotte lowered her head, her breathing uneven. She knew she had no way back. Accepting might be the key to uncovering the hidden threat and saving his life. But if in that 1 year she or House Noha drove him toward death again, then everything she had traded her life for would be destroyed for good. Seeing the color drain from her face and her hands begin to shake, he took a step back of his own accord. But if she did not find out what danger Alfonso was in now, Charlotte lunged and caught his sleeve. Wait, Alfonso? He stopped and turned, surprised. Only then did she realize she had used a duke's given name, unforgivably familiar for someone she had supposedly just met. She let go awkwardly and tried to recover. My mistake. Or are you angry that I used your name? Then use it, and you'll call me by mine, Charlotte. His composure only unsettled her further. She had expected him to be flustered. Instead, she was the one with nowhere to go. "What is it you want from me?" Charlotte faltered, her cheeks burning. There's something I wanted to ask." Seeing her flushed and flustered, Alfonso was faintly surprised. A strange feeling took hold of her. Why was he looking at her like that? They looked like nothing so much as two old lovers reunited. "What did you want to say?" he prompted when she kept hesitating. But just as she was about to ask, hurried footsteps came down the hall. Quincy strolled into the room. "Charlotte, there you are. I've been looking for you all evening." "Why are you here? I thought you were with the Aloha matriarch." "That's concluded, so I came to find you, though I never expected to run into the Duke of Edward here." Quincy turned to Alfonso, polite in word and openly probing in expression. "You once refused House Noha's proposal outright. I worried you held some grudge against us." "Hearing you say that, I'm glad I worried for nothing." Standing across from him, Alfonso found Quincy's warmth deeply strange. He answered evenly. "I declined because arrangements had already been made. There is no grudge." Quincy smiled thinly and pressed. "Still, having refused so firmly, I don't imagine your position has changed?" Alfonso's brows drew together. He did not settle the question. He left it open. "I hope you won't conclude anything too quickly. My changing my mind is not impossible. As this was an unexpected meeting, I'll excuse myself first." Alfonso bowed politely. It would be rude to intrude on a conversation between siblings any longer. "Until next time, Lady Noha." Walking the empty corridor, he turned it over. The woman called Charlotte Noha was genuinely strange. At the Marvel estate, she had scowled and sworn she would never interfere in his engagements again. But her other face, that gaze full of things unsaid, kept circling in Alfonso's mind. He remembered what she had whispered to that maid. "Let's say all of it is for love." If that were true, she would use House Edward for a year and then walk away without a backward glance to find her own happiness. A year of playing husband and wife with someone as meticulous as Charlotte. And a union between Noha and Edward would not only help him solve his own problem, but a divorce after 1 year would raise no suspicion in high society at all. A move that served them both. Yes, that was more than enough. And in that moment, a warning surfaced from a distant memory and settled over him like a shadow. "Never let anyone get close to you, Alfonso. You must never forget that." He struck the balcony rail, his breathing gone rough. Why would that memory come back now, of all times? In a carriage rolling through the late night, Quincy studied his sister. "Why exactly were you with the Duke of Edward? Tell me, Charlotte." "I've told you. It was a coincidence. The only thing we discussed was the marriage proposal." "He's a strange man. Does he not want to marry at all?" Quincy smiled, visibly relieved. "In any case, I'm glad you've decided against marrying. When you said at dinner you'd go through with it, you nearly killed me. I never wanted it from the start." Charlotte frowned at her brother. "Weren't you the one who said marriage was mandatory for House Noha?" "Noha's position is weakening. Marriage is necessary, but it's hardly the only road." Quincy's voice gentled. "Edward doesn't suit you at all. Don't marry, Charlotte. Do you remember what I used to tell you? That only the two of us are Noha. And Noha exists for us." She murmured the rest of it along with him. Childhood came back to her. Quincy whispering sweet promises that he would make her priceless, that only the two of them carried the true Noha name. And afterward, her father's other children had vanished one by one without a trace. She had lived on that single belief for years. Quincy nodded, satisfied. "Call it selfish, but I hope you stay with Noha as long as possible. You suit Noha better than anyone." Charlotte laughed bitterly to herself. Of course, Mud always suits Mud. "By the way, father returns tomorrow. You might want to make yourself scarce for a while. The moment he sees you, he'll start interrogating you about the Edward match." Charlotte was quiet a moment, then nodded. "Fine, I'll be away a few days." Looking out the window, she had thought she was past his manipulation. And yet that hollow hope of having a family still clung to her. But she would not lose Alfonso again over her own selfishness. In a darkened room, Rohan Aloha sat bound to a chair, sobbing. "I've been wronged. She seduced me first. The slap was a mistake." Quincy crossed his legs at his leisure, his voice merciless. "I was curious how you'd try to talk your way out of it, but it turns out you aren't worth listening to. Rohan Aloha, you're the one who's misunderstood. Charlotte never said a single word about you." Rohan looked up, trembling. "Then why am I being punished?" Quincy's smile was a horrible thing. Because I'm her brother. I clean up the things she doesn't get around to mentioning. Our Charlotte is soft, you see. Killing a nuisance would be far simpler, but she has never once taken a life over something like this. So I'm left with no choice but to protect my fragile little sister myself. We'll do this the way we did with Dietrich. I'll give you two options. Pay the price and keep your mouth shut, or gamble your life. Panic filled Rohan's eyes. Rohan Aloha, have you heard the story about Dietrich that I like to tell? He was attacked by thugs and lost a hand. His memory was too hazy to identify anyone. With one hand gone, his career was finished. Such a pity. Rohan went rigid, shaking all over as he realized the man who had crippled Dietrich was the devil sitting in front of him. He nodded frantically in terror, tears running past the cloth gagging his mouth. Quincy smiled. Don't worry, it won't take long. Enjoy yourself. I'll send my regards to the Aloha matriarch personally. Ignoring the muffled moaning behind him, his eyes came to rest on a familiar figure waiting for him. Now then, your turn to report. Since you're here, I assume the task is done. Isn't that right, Sylvia? Sylvia bowed until her head nearly touched the floor. The matter concerning the Duke of Edward has been handled exactly as you instructed. He turned the pages of a book without hurry, calculating. Charlotte might not realize it, but this was the situation he had been waiting a long time for. She could never defy their father. So in the end, she would have to come to him for help. He still remembered the moment she came to find him. So, Quincy, will you help me today? Or do you hate me too? He had never heard that voice from Charlotte before. The woman the world called a villainess, speaking in a small, unsteady tone, afraid of nothing more than being disliked. He knew perfectly well that if Charlotte ever discovered he was the one moving every piece, she would hate him for the rest of her life. The next day, the atmosphere in the Edward study was thin as wire. The vassals reported that the jewels prepared as tribute to the emperor before the founding festival had vanished without a trace, and every lead pointed to House Noha. On top of that, the aide-serge had been turned away by the Noha servants a second time. A one-year contract marriage with an enormous settlement should have been irresistible to her. So why had Charlotte refused so flatly? And then he understood. However crushing her family's pressure, however thoroughly the world branded her wicked, if she wanted to stay faithful to the man she loved, refusing him made perfect sense. Louis pleaded with him. Your Grace, I beg you to reconsider. Noha's position could not be clearer. Continuing would be a stain on Edward's honor. Alfonso cut him off. Enough. I understand. This is a plea from the bottom of my heart. I said I understand, Louis Barthélemy. Alfonso raised his head and ended it. He closed his eyes, tired. The rightness that had carried him across every battlefield turned out to be useless between two people. He had been arrogant to think a contract could bind her. Alfonso sighed. Very well. I admit I was wrong to make that proposal. I'll open negotiations with House Laveris. The study erupted. Louis and the vassals cheered and threw their arms around one another. The Laveris engagement was formally set in motion. But when Alfonso arrived in Devon for the negotiations, his steps faltered. His heart skipped when he caught sight of a familiar figure standing among the flowering arches. Charlotte. The name came out before he could stop it. She turned. Their eyes met, and neither of them could hide their shock. Charlotte had two reasons for coming to Devon. The first was the beauty of the lake there when spring arrived. The second came from a bitter memory of her last life. In a cold room at the Edward estate, she had ground out every word when she saw him packing. You're going to Devon? That's right. I need to discuss business with Lady Adeline. And it can't be discussed in the capital? Lady Adeline is in poor health. She stays at the Devon villa whenever the seasons turn. It isn't far. Going in person is best. That perfectly reasonable answer had set fire to her resentment. Fine. Go. But while you're away, may I invite Lord Noel to the estate? Alfonso's face darkened at once. I told you to stay away from him. He does you no good. That is my decision to make. Your position is tied directly to the honor of House Edward. Don't strain yourself worrying. You're the one on your way to see another woman after all. Alfonso's hand closed into a fist. Are you jealous because I love Lady Adeline? She could not hold it in. She slammed her fist into the wall. I have no intention of sharing this house with any mistress of yours. So you would do well never to say that woman's name in front of me again? Alfonso drew a long breath. Understood, but I will not allow you to see Noel. She almost smiled. And if I ignore you and see him anyway, will you kill me? No. He looked her in the eye, every word cold. For the honor of Edward, I will challenge Noel to a duel to the death. The finality of it made her laugh. Their dishonest marriage really was that absurd. Crossing the stone bridge over the shimmering lake, she remembered how foolishly she had behaved at his side. What she had really wanted to say was that she loved this lake too, that she loved the Devon Spring, and that she wanted to watch the petals drift on the water with him. But her purpose here was to meet Adeline, and that was done. The meeting had steadied a resolve that had been slipping. She could not forget why she had turned back time. Once she reached the capital, she would write and refuse Alfonso's proposal. Lost in thought, she heard a voice behind her. "Oh, Lily." Charlotte turned, startled. Adeline was waving happily, but what froze her in place was the man standing beside Adeline, Alfonso. Charlotte's heart hammered. Why were the two of them here together? Alfonso recovered his composure and asked in a stranger's tone, "Lady Laveris, you know this woman?" "Yes, she's a friend I met by chance on the road. Her name is Lily." Charlotte fell into the role instantly. "Then the gentleman with you earlier is your betrothed?" Adeline waved her hands in alarm. "Oh no, I'm still unattached." Charlotte's lips curved. So the match between them had not formally begun. In that case, she had no business standing in the way. "I'm sorry to have intruded on you both." She gave a polite smile and turned to go. But Alfonso spoke, dry as sand, asking that when you know perfectly well I'm unattached, you are quite the mischief maker. Adeline looked between them, lost. "You two know each other already?" Alfonso folded his arms and looked at Charlotte with a hard edge. "I never expected you to pretend we'd never met." Charlotte paled. What on earth was he angry about? What had she done? He stepped closer and looked straight into her unsteady eyes. "Have I said anything untrue, Lily? Didn't I already propose to you?" This was the worst possible outcome. Charlotte's hands closed hard. His sudden mention of the proposal in front of Adeline sent the poor girl away in embarrassment, leaving the two of them alone. In a private room, Charlotte lost her temper. "What exactly were you thinking? You abandoned Lady Adeline to drag me in here?" He didn't answer, only asked, "What was that false name about? Are you sure it doesn't concern me? And you needn't trouble yourself interfering in the match between Lady Adeline and me. Then why use a false name to meet her? Explain." Charlotte had no words. How could she explain that in the future he would love Adeline and that she was only trying to smother a feeling his proposal had shaken loose? "That isn't what matters right now. What you did will make arranging the match with Lady Adeline extremely difficult." Alfonso's gaze went cold. "Why does that bother you? It's hardly the concern of the woman who wrecked my proposals. You took my jewels and made a point of avoiding me." Charlotte stared. "What are you talking about?" Alfonso's mouth twisted. "Playing innocent when you've had Serge turned away from your gate every single day?" Her whole body went stiff. Quincy. This had Quincy's hands all over it. She had left someone at the estate to report to her, and not one piece of news had reached her. "I'm sorry, I genuinely didn't know. I can explain." But before she could finish, the door banged open and Serge came rushing in. "Your Grace, we have a serious problem. To recover the precious stone House Noha seized, we approached House Disoli, and they're demanding an extortionate price." Serge stopped short, staring at Charlotte standing right beside Alfonso. Precious stone, a rare glittering crystal that turns black when refined. It was the finest material for forging the blades of the old dynasty. The technique was long lost, but Precio remained the highest tribute owed to the crown, and House Noha, at Quincy's direction, had stolen that tribute from Alfonso. Understanding the damage Quincy had done, Charlotte spoke up. "Let me handle this." Serge turned in astonishment. "My lady, are you saying you can recover the Precio?" Charlotte gripped her skirt. None of this had happened in her last life. "I can't promise anything since Quincy doesn't always cooperate, but I'll find a way." Alfonso cut her off coldly. "There's no need to go that far." He looked at her evenly. "Time is short, and I need to move quickly on the negotiations with Lady Adeline. And the proposal is even less your concern." He turned and walked out. "I'm going to negotiate. Take care, Charlotte." Watching his back recede, her chest went tight. What if she ruined his life all over again? But standing still would only let the tragedy repeat. "Wait, Alfonso." She ran and caught his arm. He stopped. Charlotte put everything honest she had into her eyes. "I can't just stand and watch. You're right that I shouldn't interfere. But it's precisely because I got in your way before that I want to help you now. Alfonso yielded slightly. Do you have a plan? I have about 4. Alfonso added a condition immediately. None of them may involve assassination, coercion, or any other crime. Charlotte looked sheepish. Then I have no plans at all. Alfonso went still and gave her a look of pure exhaustion. Let's pretend I didn't hear that. Charlotte laughed. I'm joking, leave it to me. I really do have an idea. The moment Charlotte entered the glittering hall, she became the center of every whisper in the room. They sneered about the villainess of Noha, traded stories about the rat at the Olivia house and Rohanaloa's recent misfortune. But within seconds, the young ladies had swarmed her, exclaiming over her gown. Lady Noha's dress is gorgeous. That off-shoulder cut is so daring I can't look away. Charlotte gave a beguiling smile. It's a design by Madame Priscilla, very popular in the capital right now. This predictable adoration was entirely by design. Wearing the title of fashion icon, she could reach anyone she liked. Alfonso had roughly a week of grace, which meant she had 3 days. Tonight's target was Lisali de Soli, daughter of the family that controlled the supply of Precio stone. Seeing Lisali hesitating, uneasy about the bare-shouldered gowns for fear her mother would scold her, Charlotte deftly drew the black silk scarf from her own shoulders. You could drape it like this. It covers the shoulders naturally and still looks elegant. The ladies lit up. Oh, how refined. Truly worthy of Lady Noha. Lisali covered her face, shy. Thank you for coming tonight. To return the favor, I'd like to invite you to tea at our estate tomorrow. What do you say? Charlotte smiled to herself. The fish had taken the hook. A private tea invitation was a golden ticket into House de Soli. I look forward to it, Lady de Soli, she said sweetly, already prepared to haul in the net. That night in the Edward study, Alfonso questioned his aide. How is the investigation into the Precio Ore I ordered yesterday? Louis reported crisply. We've discovered the de Soli heir has been meeting secretly with Noha's agents. There is definitely a connection. Alfonso's eyes darkened. As I thought. Louis worked up his nerve. Your Grace, I'll be honest. I'm not comfortable with Lady Charlotte's offer. She isn't trustworthy. In that private room, she behaved as though she knew nothing at all about recent events. Do you truly trust her? Why drag an outsider into a problem we can solve ourselves? Alfonso looked straight at him. Louis Barthélemy. I understand your doubts, but that question has crossed a line. Louis flinched, then bowed his head and held his ground for the safety of the duchy. I'll accept any punishment. But please explain to me why we should trust Charlotte Noha. The Duke sighed. You really are stubborn. There are 3 reasons I gave her this task. First, if she were part of that scheme, she'd hardly volunteer to walk into hostile de Soli territory. Second, her reasoning is sound. In the current climate of bad faith, sitting down to negotiate is pointless. And finally, no one else is better suited to it right now. Louis was not satisfied. But what if Charlotte sides with House Noha? Alfonso's gaze went distant. Because Charlotte Noha needs something from me. The memory of the previous night surfaced. Charlotte had stated her terms plainly. Explain the situation clearly to Adeline. Tell her that what you once said belongs to the past and no longer holds. Only then will the proposal go smoothly. He pinched the bridge of his nose, tired. Have you forgotten? I proposed to you with my own mouth. I need you. Charlotte was unmoved. I know that, Alfonso. But marriage isn't something you do out of obligation. Marry the person you actually want. Someone who can make you happy. Happiness? You think Adeline will make me happy? Of course, she's far better to you than I am. Charlotte turned to leave. I trust you and I'll take my leave. I hope to hear good news next time. Alfonso called after her, wait. She stopped and looked back. Under the pale moon, she smiled, radiant and full of sorrow. Alfonso, I wish you happiness with all my heart. What in the world was that woman thinking? Her eyes, her smile, were so sincere anyone would have been moved. And yet he could not read a single thing behind them. That red was as vivid and beguiling as she was. At least, he told himself, she would not betray him. Louis hesitated. Your Grace, and if Lady Charlotte fails to recover the Precio? Alfonso exhaled. That won't happen. I suspect we're all underestimating her. I have faith in Charlotte Noha's ruthlessness. She's the sort who will do absolutely anything to reach her goal. Then shouldn't we be keeping our distance from her? He remembered what she had said. Let's say all of it is for love. Alfonso walked to the window and looked into the dark. She promised me she'd resolve this without committing a single crime. Louis stared. You actually believe that promise? Alfonso turned away. No, I don't. I'm testing her. Let's hope she keeps her word. Cultivating Lisali de Soli looked like simple flattery, but it was in fact an extremely fine psychological trap of Charlotte's making. Girls raised with silver spoons tend toward two reactions. Either they want to dominate or they want to compete. Domination is easy to handle. Competition is easier still. People only measure themselves against equals, so instead of squaring off against an outsider like Charlotte, they would turn on each other. One of them only had to start showing off, and envy would push them all into inflating themselves. And when a stone dropped into that churning water, whoever had puffed themselves up the most would be the most humiliated. It played out exactly as scripted. On her second visit, the de Soli tea party dissolved into chaos. Refusing to be outshone by Charlotte's presence, Lisali had loaded herself with so much jewelry it crossed into gaudy. That accidentally pricked the pride of the other young ladies and lit the fuse on a blistering argument. You dare call me a nouveau riche? Shall I have you cut out of society entirely? Lady de Soli was the one who called my jewelry cheap first. Exactly. Who was it that called me the jewelry girl? The ladies turned on Lisali as one, dressing up that gaudily only offends the eye. Forgive me, but I'll be excusing myself from this tea party. They rose together and walked out, leaving Lisali standing there alone. Watching her closest friends disappear, Lisali flushed with rage, her hands crushing her skirt. Contemptible creatures. They're happy enough to accept our jewelry, and now they call me a nouveau riche. Yet with Charlotte Noha, they don't dare open their mouths. That's quite true. A soft voice spoke directly behind her. Lisali spun around, startled. Charlotte stood there with a bright smile. They are dreadful, aren't they? Lisali was stunned. Charlotte Noha, how long have you been standing there? The prey was now perfectly isolated and perfectly panicked. Charlotte stepped closer, her voice gentle and full of sympathy. If you think I came to gloat, please stop. That isn't my intention at all. What's wrong with wearing something magnificent? Lisali looked up blankly, her eyes red. Charlotte poured honey straight into her ear. Glittering jewels, expensive things, those are our weapons as women. Isn't that so, Lady de Soli? Hearing exactly the justification she wanted, Lisali burst into sobs. Charlotte kindly offered her a white handkerchief. Take it. Clinging to hollow pride does no one any good. With her prey softened, Charlotte lit the fuse. Lady de Soli, don't you want revenge? They're certainly laughing at you behind your back, calling you a nouveau riche, the jewelry girl. Don't you want to make them regret it? The words were oil on a fire. Lisali's fists tightened. Her eyes blazed with resentment. I want them to regret it. I want revenge. Charlotte's lips curved in a satisfied smile. I'll help you get it. First, become my closest friend. Out in the garden, the group of ladies led by Lady Luz was still strolling at their leisure. They were confident Lisali would come crawling back in tears before long. What happened next struck the whole group dumb. Lisali and Charlotte came out into the garden arm in arm, chatting cheerfully. Charlotte feigned surprise. Oh dear, I thought everyone said they wouldn't be attending. What's going on, Lisali? Lisali squeezed Charlotte's arm and answered proudly. That's right, they all said they were leaving. I had no idea House de Soli had so many uninvited guests. With the villainess of Noha behind her, Lisali flipped the board instantly. Steward, why are you standing there gaping while uninvited guests wander my house? Show all of these people out. The ladies panicked and started urging. Lady Luz apologized quickly. We're about to be thrown out. Luz shouted back. Why should I apologize? I said nothing wrong. Let's see how long she protects you. When she drops you, it'll be too late for regrets. Lisali's lip curled. We'll see about that. Luz smiled venomously behind her fan. Acting so refined. You can wear all the finery you like, but the people who matter already know. House de Soli is drowning in debt. The accusation drained the blood from Lisali's face. In the gloomy study of House Noha, Duke Dominic drew on his cigar with obvious pleasure. He and Quincy were discussing the perfect trap they had laid for House de Soli. The de Soli heir, ruined by reckless investments, had borrowed an enormous sum from Noha, putting up Mount Noha as collateral. They had no idea the treasure of the old dynasty lay buried beneath that very mountain. Dominic laughed with relish. It was hard to keep a straight face when those Desoli fools came to borrow. Haven't I always said it? The clearer a man's desire, the easier he is to lead by the nose. Desoli's debt is large enough that they'd have to sell several mines to clear it. But those idiots would sooner mortgage the mountain than part with a mine. Quincy played at concern. Father, and if Desoli finds a lucrative venture and pays off the debt? Dominic scoffed. Where would that lot find the time or the means? The main thing is they don't grasp the mountain's value. Enough talk. Go and make my tea. I can't get through a day without a cup brewed by your hand. The moment he was out of the room, the smile vanished from Quincy's face. Power resting on the legacy of the past is the most worthless thing there is. Even the Emperor understands that, which is why he shoved Edward onto the battlefield to consolidate his own. But the old man was right about one thing. The clearer a person's desire, the easier they are to manipulate. Everything that had happened lately was, in fact, Quincy's script. After intercepting the shipment of Precio stone Alfonso meant to present to the crown, he had deliberately let House Desoli hear that the Duke of Edward urgently needed that very ore. Desperate, Desoli priced the Precio through the roof. If Edward swallowed it, he would take a heavy financial blow. If he refused, Desoli would lose the mountain to Noha exactly as planned. Either way, Edward suffered, and the resentment would stand as a wall between him and Charlotte. Quincy gave his steward an order, pleased with himself. Take the tea to my father, then send someone to bring Charlotte home. The steward stammered. My lord, I went to the villa in Devon, but the lady wasn't there. The caretaker said she left several days ago. Quincy's face went blank. What? The next morning in Devon, the Edward carriage stood ready. The knight Zin looked at Charlotte, uncertain. My lady, you truly won't return with us? Charlotte handed him a carefully sealed letter. Everything Alfonso needs to know is written in here. Just put it directly into his hands. My work here is finished, so there's no reason for me to travel back with you. Besides, by now Quincy had surely noticed she was gone. Lisali had sobbed out the whole truth to her. My brother's investments failed, so he borrowed a huge sum from the temple. Mount Noha isn't especially valuable, but it's my ancestors' dying wish. Now, because of that debt, it's about to be seized. Charlotte saw the whole filthy scheme at once. The temple's lending operation was in fact run by House Noha. They had lured Desoli into the trap with sweet words, then deliberately spread word that the Duke of Edward urgently needed Precio. Noha's real aim was nothing less than swallowing the old dynasty's treasure buried beneath that mountain. Charlotte turned to her people. Is everything on schedule? My lady, the workers have finished placing all the charges on Mount Noha. She nodded and handed over a generous purse. Give this to them and tell them to leave at once. It's money for their silence, so be generous. Looking out at the distant mountain, she murmured, I hope Alfonso won't be too angry. At the Edward estate, the aide Serge read the letter Zin had brought back, his hands shaking. For that reason, I have had explosives placed around Mount Noha. House Desoli lacks the manpower to deal with it, so this should serve you as an excellent weapon. I suggest you use it in your negotiations. I wish you happiness. Sincerely, Charlotte Noha. The study exploded. One of the guards was laughing so hard he choked. Now that's an idea no one else would have. Explosives? I wouldn't even have thought of it. Zin, what in the world have you done? Zin protested in a panic. I was only doing my job. How was I supposed to know the letter contained something that outrageous? Through the chaos, Alfonso sat perfectly still at his desk. The pen in his hand snapped in two. His silence pressed down on the room like ice. The knights fell instantly quiet. Is he angry? I've never once seen His Grace lose his temper. Serge ventured a shaky question. Your Grace, what should we do? Alfonso spoke slowly, something lethal glittering in his dark blue eyes. Zin, we leave for Desoli immediately. Prepare everything. Rain hammered down on the Desoli estate. In his study, the head of House Desoli sat with his head in his hands. He had given his whole life to steering this family without a single misstep. And now, Desoli was buried in debt. At dinner that very evening, his daughter Lisali had happily announced that Lady Noha had prepared a surprise gift for her. She even imagined that Charlotte Noha genuinely liked her. But as a seasoned head of house, he knew Lisali understood nothing. It was plainly a mocking warning. The woman they called the Fox of Noha would not travel all this way without a purpose. She had come to apply pressure, to force his family to settle that enormous debt. With no road left, he gritted his teeth and made a reckless decision, Wrong as he knew it was, to clear the debt he would have to force Edward to buy the Preccio. At that exact moment, the study door flew open. His son Nathan came bursting in, stammering that Edward had arrived. The Duke of Edward entered with a grave expression. "Forgive my discourtesy, my lord, but this is urgent and there's no time for formalities." As the head of Desailly tried to salvage some dignity, Alfonso cut straight through. "I said it's urgent. A bomb has been planted on Mount Noha." The man froze, cold sweat breaking out. "You? What did you say?" Alfonso produced a sheet of paper. "I came at once to take responsibility for this." Read it. Hands shaking, the head of Desailly read every line. It was a letter from Charlotte Noha to the Duke of Edward. In it, she declared she would answer for what her family had done. The reason Desailly was gouging on the price of Preccio was the debt owed to Noha. Her tone was ice. She wrote that both sides had originally agreed to resolve the matter within the bounds of morality and order. But methods that fail to achieve their purpose are merely the excuses of the defeated. What use is traveling all the way to Desailly and coming away with nothing but a kept promise? For that reason, I have placed a bomb on Mount Noha. Desailly appears to lack the manpower to handle it, so this should serve as an excellent weapon. By the last line, the paper was shaking violently in his hands. His face went white. What in God's name is this? Alfonso's voice was absolute. "You will order the mountain sealed and searched immediately. I'll supply the manpower." Nathan lost his temper. "This isn't help, this is you taking responsibility. If you weren't in league with that damned fox—" His father cut him off coldly. "That's enough, Nathan. If you want someone to blame, start with your own disastrous investments." Struck where it hurt, Nathan fell silent. The head of Desailly hurried to apologize for his son's rudeness. Alfonso waved it off. He had brought enough men to search the mountain. He required only 2 things from the head of the house. First, permission for his men to enter Mount Noha. Naturally, the man had no grounds to refuse. Afterward, Alfonso met privately with Lady Lasalle. He came to the point. He knew she was the last person to speak with Charlotte Noha, and he wanted to know what had passed between them. Lasalle's face fell, plainly wounded. She said dully that the conversation had been nothing special. When she had confided about the mountain and the debt, Charlotte had only smiled and promised her a surprise gift as consolation. Lasalle had even given her a precious jewel as a token of their friendship. She clenched her hands. It seems I was the only one who imagined we were friends. Learning about the letter from her father, Lasalle finally understood that all of it had been about Edward from the start. She thought Charlotte cruel for deceiving her and abandoning her at her weakest. Charlotte's smile that day surfaced in her mind. "Well then, Lasalle, would you like your revenge this time?" At the time, it had sounded absurd, as if she would ever get revenge through Charlotte's hands. She had naively taken it as comfort. Lasalle asked to be excused so she could speak with her family, but at that moment the door burst open and Louis rushed in out of breath. "Your Grace, while excavating Mount Noha, we found treasure." The workers unearthed a chest packed with ancient Genevieve gold coins. A single one of them could feed a small domain for a year. And there were hundreds, along with jewels and priceless relics. But that isn't all. Louis held out a cylindrical object. "This is the bomb we found. There's no explosive inside. It's packed with dirt." Alfonso stared. "No bomb." "Then what was that threatening letter for?" Louis burst out. "We've all been played. You. House Desailly. All of us." In that instant, Lasalle's eyes went wide. Charlotte's whisper echoed in her ears. "Well, since things have come to this, I'll give you a surprise gift." Days later, under a brilliant sun, Charlotte Noha walked unhurriedly out of the estate. Settled in the moving carriage, she rested her chin on her hand and looked out the window, piecing it all together. By now, every problem in Desailly would be neatly resolved. In truth, every bomb she had planted on Mount Noha was a fake, rolled soil dressed up to look the part. Her reasoning was very simple. The head of House Desailly would never dig up that mountain himself. From Lasalle's tears, she had learned the mountain was sacred ground, the resting place of the Desailly ancestors. Would they break that ground over a rumor of buried treasure? Now she had her answer. Even if they knew the old dynasty's legacy lay beneath it, none of it mattered if Desailly refused to touch the earth. She had, of course, suggested in her letter that they simply blast the mountain. But a man like Alfonso would never have the stomach for it. She had also considered telling him about the treasure, or simply waiting for Desoli to find it. She discarded both for one reason: too slow and not effective enough. That was how she lived. That was how the villainess of Noha worked. She had resolved everything cleanly, without killing or threatening a single life, exactly as she had promised. By now, Desoli would have sold the treasure and cleared their debt, which meant they could no longer demand an absurd sum from Edward, the man who had come to their aid. And with that weight lifted, the naive little Lisali could finally hold her head up and trample Lady Luce's pride, exactly as Charlotte had taken the trouble to teach her. Picturing it, she felt a small flicker of anticipation. Then her eyes dimmed. She had already been cast aside. Their affairs were no longer any concern of hers. If she alone played the villain, everyone else's problems got solved. There was no more perfect ending than that. The only thing left to face was Noha. Given the state of things in Desoli, it was only a matter of time before her father learned what she had done. She would not escape his fury when she returned. As before, she might be beaten savagely, or something sharp might be hurled at her head until she bled. Or worse, she might be cast out of the family. But if she ran, every bit of her father's rage would land on Edward instead. She could not flee like a coward. For now, she would hide in a small cabin to stay out of Alfonso's sight, then plan carefully once she returned. However much it hurt, it was still better than wandering with no direction trying to save him. And if the day came when she was cast out, perhaps Alfonso would abandon the engagement too. That would be enough. As for how she would live afterward, she could sell the jewelry she was wearing. She had grown used to hardship in her last life. A violent fit of coughing hit her without warning. She doubled over, hands shaking as she pressed the handkerchief to her mouth. When it passed, she looked down at the cloth, her face drained and exhausted. She probably had a year left. With luck, death might come sooner. Thinking of Alfonso, she told herself that if she died early, perhaps he would be freed and find happiness that much sooner. An old memory surfaced of the day she had dozed off in a carriage. A brand new carriage had been delivered to the estate. Alfonso explained gently that he had ordered it because the old one looked uncomfortable. This one had blackout curtains and softer seats so she could rest. But the Charlotte of that time bristled like a hedgehog. She glared at him. "What on earth are you saying? Do you mean it was amusing to watch me nod off from carriage sickness on the way to the imperial banquet? Why not go and spread it across the whole capital while you're at it? If your aim was to embarrass me, congratulations." Leaving him standing there in silence, she had declared she would sooner walk than set foot in that carriage. Looking back now, she wondered what his face had looked like as he listened. She saw her old self as a rose covered in thorns. Even toward the person kind enough to water her, she had bared every spine and refused to give up a single petal. Only when every petal had withered and fallen did she understand, bitterly, that his kindness had never been meant to belittle her. If she had understood him a little sooner, she could at least have said thank you. The carriage rolling to a stop cut through her thoughts. A single tear slid down her cheek. A second chance? She laughed at herself. You've lost your mind, Charlotte Noha. Her chance had ended completely in her last life. The only thing left to do was stay as far from Alfonso's life as she possibly could. From this day on, she would never face him again. And yet the moment she pushed open the carriage door and stepped down, a tall figure stood squarely in her path. "It's been a while, Charlotte. I've been very much looking forward to seeing you again." Alfonso looked straight at her. "Were you planning to slip back to Noha after settling everything?" Charlotte recovered her cool at once. "What business is that of yours, and how did you stop my carriage? Does a man as proud of his integrity as you really go rifling through carriage travel logs?" Alfonso answered evenly that it had been no trouble at all, since the head of House Desoli had authorized it himself. Charlotte ground her teeth and silently cursed that ungrateful old man. This was exactly why she hated doing good deeds. "And your reason for abducting me to the Edward estate?" Alfonso frowned. "Abducting? You're the one who ran first." "I resolved the problem as promised, and I declined your proposal. I don't think we have anything left to discuss." His hand tightened into a fist. "If there's nothing left to discuss," his eyes went heavy with sadness, "then why do you keep running from me?" Inside a sunlit room, the air was thick enough to choke on. Alfonso looked at her steadily and pressed. "Why did you run, Charlotte?" Her voice came out unsteady. "Do I really have to explain that?" The Desoli problem was resolved cleanly in the end. The head of House de Soli came to me and said it was all thanks to your grace. But Alfonso knew perfectly well that the person who deserved those thanks was not him. Charlotte's eyes wavered. She understood, stunned, why he had gone to the trouble of stopping her carriage and bringing her here. He had been afraid she would think he had broken his word, afraid she would disappear before he could thank her. His voice came low and warm. You're the one who deserves their gratitude, and an apology from me for the misunderstanding. Charlotte, flustered, tried to sound indifferent. You brought me all this way just to say thank you? There was no need. I didn't do it hoping anyone would be grateful. I said these things simply because I wanted to. His stubbornness made her sigh and press a hand to her forehead. I'm someone who does as she pleases, ruining other people's affairs and then walking away. Is that how you wish someone happiness? Charlotte thought to herself that Alfonso was always like this. Excessively upright, excessively stubborn, the exact opposite of a liar like her. It was precisely because he was that kind of man that she truly wanted him happy. And her parting words to him had turned out to mean nothing at all. I never imagined what I said would cause so much trouble. If I'd known, I'd have kept it to myself. You could easily have broken your promise to me. Instead, you handled everything so gently it's almost worrying. What now? Are you going to find fault with how I work as well? Alfonso looked deep into her eyes and answered with absolute sincerity. That farewell of yours was not meaningless to me, because I know you did it for my sake. The word struck home and she flinched, color rising in her cheeks. Because of you, I recovered the Precio safely. I really do have to thank you. Charlotte hurriedly covered half her burning face, cutting him off. That's enough. It was nothing. Seeing her wave off the credit, Alfonso frowned. It was a great deal. Why do you insist on belittling your own work? I only wanted to take responsibility for the de Soli problem and for your marriage. Why must you deny the good you've done? Admit it, what you did for me. Stop it, Charlotte shouted, her face scarlet. Fine, if you insist, then leave it at that. I never thought I'd be forced to accept someone's thanks. You win. Satisfied? In that moment, time seemed to stop. Alfonso stared at her. A face that was always cold and unreachable, suddenly flustered and flushed with embarrassment. It was such an ordinary expression. So why was his heart hammering like this? His own face went red. Sensing the strangeness in the air, Charlotte spoke quickly. Enough. If you're truly grateful, then take me home. We've settled our debts, haven't we? Alfonso closed his fists, forcing his pulse steady. Of course, that was my intention. But right then, a clatter of noise from outside cut the conversation short. Forgive me, Charlotte. I need to step out and see what's happening. Charlotte let out a breath as if a weight had lifted. It's fine. I was about to leave anyway. Not seeing you off myself sits badly with me. I'll be back shortly. The moment he stepped into the great hall, chaos met him. Zin was trying to hold back a pack of belligerent old nobles. At their head was Lord Rina Paihonik. The lord complained loudly, indignant that he had traveled from the provinces to congratulate the duke on his wedding only to be received so coldly. When Zin firmly reminded him that seeing the duke required an appointment, Paihonik turned condescending, sneering that the current Edward was far too arrogant, nothing like the previous duke. The ringleader was none other than Paihonik, the fiercest opponent in the family. He detested the duke's sudden marriage, and detested even more that a man of such uncertain blood as Alfonso should sit in the highest seat, war hero or not, however much the late Duchess had trusted him. Watching Zin so furious, he nearly drew his sword, held back only by his comrades. Paihonik smirked to himself. Soldiers who knew nothing but swinging steel were no match for the seasoned minds of the nobility. Provoke them into striking first, and turning a young lord into a puppet would be effortless. But every calculation stopped when steady footsteps sounded in the hall. Alfonso appeared, his face like frost, his gaze cutting straight into the man. Lord Paihonik, are you unaware that arriving unannounced is an insult? Named directly, Paihonik bowed, though venom still dripped from his tongue. The roads are long, your grace, and letters difficult to send ahead. The previous duke never used his authority to bully anyone. I would ask you not to be so severe. Then the fox showed his tail, declaring he had come to offer counsel to a man who had inherited a title only to bury his face in the battlefield. I hear you are to be married. A duke must strictly observe the traditions of House Edward. Now that the previous duke is gone, I believe it falls to a vassal like myself to act. Among the vassals, it is widely said that, unlike the previous duke, You are so enamored with your war games that you intend to ignore our voices entirely. The steady click of heels came down the hall. Charlotte stepped out, carrying an authority that filled the room, her burning eyes crushing every other presence in it. In her last life, as Duchess of House Edward, Charlotte had never once truly lived as a member of that house. She remembered the cruel gossip behind her back, calling herself a duchess and doing nothing but embroidery. They whispered about how the Duke always traveled to the domains alone, looking for all the world like a bachelor, while she serenely accepted every gift he sent. They agreed it was high time she performed a wife's duties. Her becoming a hollow shell at Edward had been unavoidable. From the start, Alfonso needed her to exist only to complete the appearance of a family. And after the wedding, she had gone on secretly reporting Edward's every move to her father and Quincy. To House Noha, she was nothing but a spy. That role meant she could never be allowed near Edward's real secrets. She had told herself that as an outsider, ignoring the gossip and staying out of family matters was the best help she could offer Alfonso. It was the only thing an empty shell, a Noha who had foolishly fallen in love with him, could do for him. Charlotte turned her cold eyes on the fat lord. You mean to argue that while others endure every hardship in the field, you're entitled to lounge comfortably at home? War games. What an elegant phrase, coming from a man with a face that greasy. Have you all lived this long without grasping something that simple? Reborn, she was ready to grind anyone who touched Alfonso into dust. Alfonso turned, startled, and asked why she wasn't in the room as she had been told. Charlotte walked forward, unbothered. You were gone so long I had to come out. Is nonsense like this really what you left me waiting for? Pyhonic exploded. Lady Noha, what insolence is this? The Duke is speaking with us. How dare an outsider intrude on this family's internal affairs? Charlotte narrowed her eyes at him. She remembered Rena Pyhonic very well. In her last life, he had baited her in exactly the same way. This time they were using the marriage as a lever to work their way into Edward's power. An uninvited guest, barging into a meeting scheduled in advance. I see no reason I shouldn't intervene. If you don't want me involved, then don't make a spectacle of yourself in front of me. Pyhonic sputtered. You what? Do you not know where you're standing? Charlotte fixed him with a stare and ground out every word. It seems you're the one who doesn't know where he's standing. I'm genuinely curious what you think you're leaning on. With no backing at all, and you dare stand here barking on Edward's own doorstep? Pyhonic went red with fury, spluttering that Charlotte Noha dared speak to him so insolently. Around them, the vassals began to murmur. They had recognized who she was. In their eyes, the villainess of Noha might well become this family's next duchess. Yet inwardly, Pyhonic sneered. He was certain he understood Edward better than anyone. A man with morals as rigid as Alfonso's would never accept a Noha. He would not let this woman wreck his plans. Recovering his lofty tone, he declared loudly that she had no respect for her elders, and no breeding at all. Charlotte answered without haste. They say a man talks a great deal when his end is near. Looking at you, I'd say there's truth in it. While the fat lord stammered and shook, she added calmly that she was only stating a fact. The louder he shouted, the more he proved her right. Behind her, 2 young knights flushed scarlet, silently agreeing that they had never in their lives heard anything so satisfying. She turned to Alfonso. Isn't that so, Alfonso? He lowered his voice. That's enough, Charlotte. This is an internal matter of House Edward, and I will not permit anyone else to interfere further. Charlotte watched him quietly. He was frowning sternly enough, but his ears had gone red, and there was something oddly pleased about his expression. She read the room and stepped back. If you say so, I'll stop here, but please don't keep me waiting any longer. He turned sharply to Pyhonic, his gaze cold enough to freeze the man where he stood. As you heard, I don't have much time. Will you wait until my patience runs out or leave on your own? Pyhonic's heart lurched. Under the crushing pressure of the young duke, he backed away, silently cursing Charlotte Noha for wrecking everything. With no other option, he lowered his voice and asked to withdraw, claiming the visit had been a mere courtesy. But he was too spiteful to leave cleanly. On his way out, he brought up the wedding again. By tradition, the duchess's ring is passed down from the previous duchess. I'm certain you're well aware of that. At the mention of the ring, Alfonso's expression darkened. He managed a stiff, of course. The lord smiled faintly. I was very close to the late duchess, so I greatly look forward to seeing that ring again. I hope our next meeting will be at your wedding, Your Grace. Pyhonic and his party finally departed on a wave of empty congratulations. Alfonso was restlessly turning the cufflink on his sleeve. She knew that habit of his very well. It surfaced whenever something was wrong. Remembering how strangely he had reacted when Pahanik mentioned the family heirloom, a bad feeling passed through her. Had something happened to the previous Duchess's ring? Sitting in the moving carriage, Charlotte propped her chin on her hand and thought it over. Alfonso losing his composure like that was genuinely odd. She knew he was rushing the marriage because he had not yet secured authority over the vassals, but there were only two explanations. Either something was wrong with the marriage, or something had happened to the previous Duchess's ring. The mention of the ring called up a memory from her last life. It was her first banquet after the wedding. Old Pahanik had approached with a false smile and a searching stare, using tradition as his weapon. He told her the new bride was required to wear the previous Duchess's ring, then made a point of glancing at the ruby on her finger and asking pointedly whether that was the late Duchess's. Charlotte knew perfectly well the ring she wore was not the heirloom. They were simply using her to attack Alfonso. The fat lord pressed on, sneering that the ring she wore looked old and shabby. Charlotte did not flinch. She lifted her chin. Must I really wear something that shabby in the name of tradition? The inheritance of an heirloom is a matter of great importance. Charlotte swept it aside. I have no intention of living like a pauper. A Duchess of Edward dressed in rags would only be a laughingstock. He shouted, "This extravagance of yours, have you no concern at all for Edward's finances?" Charlotte laughed openly in his face. Concern for Edward's finances? You'd do better worrying that a beggar under a bridge will empty the imperial treasury. She stared him down and ground out each word. If you bring that garbage in front of me again, I will make certain you're the only person left worrying about his own family's finances. The reason she remembered that quarrel so clearly was Alfonso. The man who frowned at everything she did had that day looked the other way. But however much he treated her like a duchess, deep down, he had never truly considered her his wife. The proof was that the previous duchess's blue diamond ring was never hers. Then one day the estate filled with whispers. The servants murmured that the Duke and Lady Adeline Laveris had a very particular relationship. Someone had seen Adeline carrying the late Duchess's ring, and whenever Lady Laveris visited, the Duke sealed off the entire floor containing his study. And of course he never said a word about it to Charlotte. Shut in her room, she tried to make herself small enough not to hear the gossip. She kept telling herself a man as upright as Alfonso would never betray anyone. But what if he was hiding the truth? What if he was afraid that once she knew, the villainess of Noha would turn her jealousy on the woman he loved? The thoughts gnawed at her without pause. So on the day Adeline visited Edward, Charlotte decided to invite her to tea and find the truth for herself. Over tea, she asked about Adeline's new romance. Adeline answered innocently that she and the man had known each other about 3 years. She spoke about him happily. He's quiet, a little distant, but he's a good man. From the very beginning, I knew he was meant for me, and he said he felt the same. Isn't that wonderful? Every word went into Charlotte like a knife. She kept the smile on her face. What an astonishing coincidence. Perhaps fate really does exist. Adeline went on, a little wistful. Truthfully, I once meant to give him up. I nearly married someone else. But then something happened. I thought we'd never see each other again, and somehow everything fell into place after all. At that moment, the door swung open. Alfonso burst in, hair disordered, breath ragged, his eyes wide with the panic of a man who had lost something irreplaceable. Seeing that raw fear in his eyes, she understood. Yes, Alfonso loved Adeline. She felt like a stone in the road, wedged into a love she did not even have the right to want. The old Charlotte would have slapped Adeline in front of everyone, cut out the tongues of gossiping maids, and put out the eyes of anyone who dared look up at her. That was all Noha had ever taught her. But in the end, she did none of it. Forced into a marriage he never wanted, saddled with a wife who never once did her duty. Alfonso had endured more than enough. So she buried all of it. There was no reason left to dig it up. Afterward, she wrote a letter to Quincy. And then Alfonso died because of her. After the funeral, Adeline came to her, saying there was something she had to say. Adeline held out a small box. I'll leave this here because it belongs to Edward. It was the first time Charlotte had ever faced the late Duchess's ring, and she could not make herself take it because she knew it would never be hers. The carriage stopped, cutting the memory short. Something about that ring is wrong, isn't it? The steward bowed. Welcome home, my lady. The young master is waiting for you. Charlotte drew a long breath. The first thing to handle was the problem directly in front of her. Walking the long corridor, she felt as though she were stepping willingly into a tiger's den. At the door, she pushed, and the heavy wood swung open. Inside, Quincy spoke with a teasing lilt. I thought I was far too old for hide and seek, but apparently some part of me is still a child. At last I get to see your face, Charlotte. Well then, was the trip to Desoli enjoyable? Charlotte answered flatly. The usual. Nothing unusual happened here, I hope. Quincy shrugged. With you here, how could anything be unusual? I had a great deal of trouble cleaning up the mess you made. Charlotte's brows lifted. Hold on. My mess? Let's be precise, Quincy. You're the one who caused it. You stole something extremely valuable from Edward, didn't you? Quincy shrugged again. I don't recall doing anything of the sort. She took a step forward. Weren't you the one who told me suspicion is sometimes the strongest evidence there is? So why not simply return the Prezio to Edward? Plainly put, do you intend to give it back? Of course, if that's what you want. Quincy came closer and put his hands on her shoulders. I've told you, only we understand each other. Everything I do is for you, Charlotte. He lowered his voice. Father was furious about what you did. Had I been a moment slower, it would have been past saving. You know what he's like, don't you? Charlotte went rigid. The memory of that slap burned into her cheek in her last life came back, and she shivered. She had endured more than enough of that man's cruelty. I explained to Father that you caused trouble in order to win Edward's favor, and it simply didn't go to plan. Next time, tell me first. Understood? And I apologize for interfering with the marriage arrangements you'd made. I only meant to help. Next time? Charlotte pushed him away. No, there won't be a next time. Quincy frowned. Why not? They're a family that brings us nothing. We've always been at odds. There's no reason to prolong it. Is that all? No other reason? Quincy was silent a moment, then reached out and stroked her cheek. In the end, you're right. No sense wasting effort on pointless things. From now on, I won't interfere in Edward's affairs any further. Charlotte tensed. Wait, from now on? I told Father you were focused on the Edward marriage. But lately, Edward has been rather close with Lady Laverus. The situation was getting complicated. So I acted. Quincy stroked her cheek and murmured, Don't worry, I didn't touch Edward directly. It was a small thing. Then he ground out each word. I poisoned Adeline Laverus. Charlotte's pupils shrank, her heart stopping. Poisoned? Her? The world came apart around her. Where had she gone wrong? Quincy remained perfectly unbothered. Don't worry, it isn't fatal. She'll simply be bedridden a while. A flawless way to destroy the Edward match. Charlotte's fists closed. She realized bitterly that she had set out to make Alfonso happy and was ruining his life all over again. So you poisoned Adeline Laverus. Quincy took a calm sip of wine, called it the most convenient and reliable method, and told her not to dwell on it. He smiled. Everything I do for you. The phrase shot through her like current. In her last life, even after Alfonso died, she had heard exactly these words. It's all for you. Every bit of it is for you. She had believed it completely, even while it suffocated her to the point of wanting to die. That was the true nature of House Noha, and she had once accepted being its villainess. But Charlotte understood now that there had never been a shred of respect for her in any of it. She cut him off flatly. You're wrong, Quincy. You knew I went to Desoli and you learned nothing from it. Why do you think I went? I've fallen in love with Edward. I will do anything to make him happy. And not with hollow flattery, the way you've always handled me. Even if it means turning my back on House Noha, even if it means destroying myself. That is what it actually means to care about someone. She smiled coldly and walked away without a backward glance. Goodbye, Quincy. And do give my regards to Father. Quincy stood frozen in the dark, his hand reaching after nothing at all. Charlotte went straight from there to visit Adeline Laverus in her sickbed. Accepting the fresh flowers, Adeline thanked her over and over. Poisoned or not, her condition was not severe. That was genuine luck. Charlotte produced a small vial and handed it to her. This is a tonic I use myself. It works wonders, so I brought it for you. It was, in fact, the antidote. Charlotte framed it neatly as an apology for the recent misunderstandings. Adeline innocently assumed she meant the false identity and forgave her cheerfully. Looking at that pure smile, Charlotte sighed inwardly. It really was difficult to dislike someone like her. Then she carefully steered the conversation toward Adeline's marriage. The girl admitted shyly that she had never felt this way about anyone before, and had no intention of letting the chance slip past. Adeline smiled happily. Speaking of which, he's coming to check on me soon. A bad feeling rose in Charlotte's chest. Alfonso was coming here? Wanting no further misunderstandings, she stood quickly. I won't intrude on your time, so I'll excuse myself. Before she could go, a crisp knock came at the door and a low, warm voice carried through. Lady Laveris, I'm coming in. Charlotte froze, cold sweat breaking out. She truly did not want to face him in another absurd situation like this. The door opened. She held her breath, but the man who walked in was a tall stranger. Adeline introduced him happily. Charlotte, this is Sir Liam Ephraim. He's the one I told you about. The knight bowed courteously. I'm Liam Ephraim. You said Sir Ephraim? Adeline blinked, lost. Why would you bring up the Duke of Edward? Isn't he the one who proposed to you? Charlotte explained haltingly that she had heard rumors of the Duke and Lady Laveris meeting frequently, and assumed the two were discussing marriage. Adeline waved both hands, blushing. That's entirely a misunderstanding. I've never once discussed marriage with the Duke of Edward. It turned out the man Adeline had loved quietly for 3 years was Liam, the son of a friend of her father's. Since he had just finished his years as a knight and returned to the capital, her father had swept every other proposal aside to bring the two of them together. Charlotte stood there while something detonated in her mind. But studying Liam more closely, she nodded to herself. Adeline's taste had not changed in the slightest. From Alfonso in her last life to Liam in this one, both carried the severe bearing of men who lived as knights. She thought back to what Adeline had told her about a quiet man, and the pieces in her head broke apart and reassembled. Liam had far too much in common with Alfonso, and he had returned to the capital at exactly the moment Alfonso's marriage discussions began. In her last life, she had never interfered with Liam's return, which meant he had come back at this same time then too. Which meant there had never been a single marriage discussion between Alfonso and Adeline in her last life. Back then, she had focused entirely on wrecking his proposals. When she destroyed the third with a flood of rumors and scandal, society decided she and Alfonso must have a special relationship. She had torn herself apart over it, calling herself cruel for ruining their love. But the truth may have been that Adeline had turned that proposal down herself from the very beginning. And if that was true, why had there been so many secret, suspicious meetings between House Laveris and House Edward? Charlotte swallowed her shock and lifted her head. Forgive the misunderstanding, Lady Laveris. If it wasn't about marriage, then what has been bringing you and Edward together so often? Adeline lowered her eyes shyly, then hesitantly drew out a carefully sealed envelope. This is meant to stay secret, but since I need your help, I'll explain. Please deliver these documents to the Duke of Edward personally. She explained that the Duke had placed a private commission with her family's atelier. That was why they kept meeting. But a complication had delayed the work, and she needed to inform him. Charlotte unfolded the sheet inside, and her eyes went wide. This design. Was this a plan to recreate the previous Duchess's ring? Charlotte climbed straight into a carriage bound for the Edward estate, staring blankly through the window. That drawing was something that could never be allowed out. Adeline had found no one she trusted enough to carry it, and Charlotte's appearance had been almost providential. But her mind was in complete disorder. Should she be more shaken by Alfonso quietly having a copy of the ring made? Or by the possibility that he and Adeline had never had any romance at all? If that were true, what became of the entire plan she had been reborn to carry out? Where in this tangle was she supposed to find Alfonso's happiness? The carriage stopped before the Grand Edward estate. Charlotte urgently asked the guards to open the gate, saying she needed to see the Duke. The guard refused firmly. No one entered without an appointment. She laughed at her own recklessness. What was she thinking, tearing over here like someone out of her mind? She had refused Alfonso's proposal. She was not the Duchess of Edward. She had no connection to him at all. Panic alone had made her fall back into old habits. There would be no second chance. Was she going to ruin everything again? She had come back to this life to save Alfonso, and in the end, she had changed nothing. Then a familiar warm voice spoke behind her, saying her name gently. Charlotte. She turned, stunned. Alfonso stood there, his cheeks slightly flushed, looking at her with surprise and confusion. What brings you here? A few hours earlier at the imperial palace, Emperor Benoit III had summoned Alfonso. After a few words on affairs of state, he came directly to the point. "Duke, what exactly is between you and Charlotte Noha?" Alfonso stilled. The emperor's eyes narrowed. "Everyone knows Noha sent a proposal and you refused it. But you also know I am preparing to destroy House Noha. So why did you offer to marry her?" Alfonso kept his composure and explained that he only wished to borrow Charlotte's influence briefly, and that she had refused him of her own accord. Inwardly, he reminded himself he could never say the truth, that she had refused him because she wanted him to be happy. The emperor sighed and remarked on Alfonso's remarkable record of rejection, from Charlotte to Lady Lavarus. He even offered to sponsor a new marriage himself, bypassing the temple entirely. But Alfonso declined tactfully, unwilling to provoke the clergy. The emperor clicked his tongue, cursing the meddlesome temple and House Noha for always standing in the way. He remarked that happiness had always seemed a distant thing for Alfonso, even as a child. Happiness, the word rippled outward in his mind. Whenever he thought of it, Charlotte's face appeared with perfect clarity, along with the soft words she had said. "Live a happy life, Alfonso." He had frowned then, thoroughly displeased. "You always attach the word happiness to your goodbyes." Charlotte had answered easily, "Because I genuinely want you to be happy, marry, love someone, have children, live well. No worries, no complications, nothing but happiness." "And what about you?" Her step faltered. "Naturally, I'll live well too, every bit as happily as you." He would not let it go. "So we simply hear about each other from a distance? Is hearing rumors of each other's happiness enough? Why wouldn't you want to hear it for yourself?" Charlotte pushed the distance back between them. "Because you and I have nothing to do with one another anymore?" That coldness ignited something in him. "After everything, you truly believe there's nothing between us? Would it do either of us any good to stay close? You were the one who wanted us to be strangers." His hand closed until the veins stood out. "When did I ever say that?" Charlotte looked at him, unwavering. "I've told you. I don't like you, and I don't intend to blame you for it. I simply see no reason for us to keep meeting." He said quietly, "I do. I don't hate you." Charlotte smiled. "Thank you for saying so. But I'll bring you nothing good. You should forget me. Goodbye, Alfonso. I hope you're always happy." The rejection by Adeline. The trouble stirred up by his vassals and the matter of the previous duchess's ring. He had never told anyone about his plan to recreate it, not even his closest retainers, because he refused to draw them into the liability. And yet Charlotte had appeared in front of him, holding that very design in her hands. "I was asked to bring this by Adeline. You hid it so thoroughly she couldn't even use an intermediary." Charlotte frowned. "Why did you commission this? And how does Rena Pihonic know about it?" "Alfonso, what exactly are you hiding about the previous duchess's ring? You haven't made any progress with Adeline either, have you? So what is this marriage of yours really about?" "There isn't much time. Stop standing there. Say something, Alfonso." "I genuinely don't understand. How do you know what that ring truly is? And why are you angry with me over it?" He raised a gloved hand to his face and tried to steady himself. "Do you remember what I once said about you? Cunning, shameless, perfectly willing to use violence." Charlotte finished it for him, and lacking any moral standard. "Yes, I remember." Something in Alfonso shifted violently. Those had been his honest thoughts once. But she was the one who declared they had nothing to do with each other. So why was she doing this? His troubles were not her business. A strange warmth spread through his chest. Why does she care about me this much? What am I to her? His voice turned grave. "There are only two reasons anyone acts like this. Either you've wagered on me or you love me. And since we're strangers, this must be a wager you intend to win." Alfonso looked into her eyes with a resolve he had never shown before. "If you truly want to win that wager, you'll have to step forward yourself. I've thought a great deal about what you said, and exactly as you wanted, I'm going to be clear about what I want. Lady Noha, please enter a contract marriage with me." Sitting on the fine sofa, Charlotte looked up at him. "Do you truly believe marrying me will make you happy?" Alfonso folded his arms and answered evenly, "I don't expect it to." Charlotte faltered. "Then why? Didn't I already say it? I want to marry you. That is all there is. The one always wishing for my happiness is you, not me." The words landed like a blow. She closed her hands hard. It was exactly as she had guessed. To him, this marriage was a political instrument for securing power at home. But a fear rose in her all the same. If she married him in this life, would she take his life away again? Sensing her hesitation, Alfonso spoke. "Are you afraid of not getting what you want?" Charlotte bristled instantly. "Who said I was afraid? Then what are you hesitating over? If you're confident, sign here." He laid a contract on the table and went through it clause by clause. 1 year of effect, mutual priority and support of one another. In the event of dissolution, Charlotte would still receive an enormous settlement and the absolute protection of House Edward. She skimmed it, one corner of her mouth lifting. If it were anyone but me, they'd be drooling over this contract. It reads like a swindle. She looked at him. "Promise me one thing. Once we're married, you answer every question I ask." Alfonso nodded without hesitation. "I promise." She signed decisively and pressed the wax seal. Setting the pen down, her eyes sharpened. "Now, tell me about the previous Duchess's ring." Alfonso began with events from a few months earlier, when the Luher region sent an urgent request for grain relief. Every neighboring vassal refused to open their stores. To solve it, he decided to expand Edward's own standing army, ordering the families to concentrate their forces in the capital to cut down on mouths to feed and free up funds for Luher. But Lord Rina Pahanik blocked it, arguing that raising troops while House Edward remained unsettled was wasteful. And Edward was unsettled, he said, because it had lost one of the 3 supreme symbols of its authority. The previous Duchess's ring? The ring was the sole heirloom passed down among the duchesses, the emblem of the lady's independent authority. With its distinctive engraving, it also served as an official seal. It was not a piece of jewelry, it was a key to power. Charlotte was taken aback. I had no idea that ring mattered so much. But how could something that important simply vanish? Very simply. Rina Pahanik is the only person who knows the ring was lost. After she married, my mother returned constantly to her family home, to Pahanik. She died in a carriage accident on Pahanik land, and the ring disappeared immediately afterward. Charlotte pressed a hand to her forehead. She understood now. Before the Duchess died, the previous Duke had already passed, leaving House Edward leaderless. Losses stacked one on the other, and the house fell into confusion. And since almost no one knew the ring even existed, no one could recover it. Alfonso had been far too young to take over. Immediately afterward, he was sent to the field for 10 years under the Emperor. Only when he returned did he discover the heirloom had vanished. By the time he began investigating, the ring had likely already been in Rina Pahanik's hands. The man had been close to the late Duchess and knew exactly what it was worth. "That's why I need your help. I need someone to recover that ring for me quietly. The Duke's ring and the Duchess's ring must exist together for the succession to be legitimate. Pahanik wants it to control Edward and squeeze it." Charlotte considered. He must dream every night of ruling Edward. But wouldn't forging the ring create a bigger problem? The truth would come out eventually. Alfonso was unruffled. "That isn't a real problem. We can always simply make a new ring." Charlotte blinked. "A new one? What about tradition?" "Tradition matters, but it cannot be allowed to threaten the present." He explained that the secrets of the ring passed only to whoever held it. The word of the head of the house carried more weight than any vassals, so a new ring would cause no difficulty. Charlotte was still uneasy. But what if Pahanik uses it to set a trap? They could turn the other vassals against you. Alfonso cut in. "Charlotte, you've misunderstood. The only people I cannot touch are House Pahanik, my mother's family. If any other vassal forgets his place, I'll deal with him by law." Charlotte was startled. "You intend to strip lands and titles? The vassals will revolt." But looking at the cold, dark set of his eyes, she suddenly understood. She had seen that expression many times on her brother Quincy's face. It was the look of a man prepared to settle everything in blood. Alfonso said it plainly, "As long as they don't defy my orders, I won't take their lives." Charlotte realized that in her last life, during the early years of their marriage, he had restricted her social activities under the pretext of household management, and shortly afterward, a great upheaval had swept through the vassal families. So that was when he had quietly settled everything with an iron hand. She thought she knew Alfonso well. There was still far too much she had never known. Charlotte pulled herself back to the present. "All right, we can't forge a ring for now, since only House Laveris has the skill, so my task is to recover the ring from Pahanik. Is there anything else?" Alfonso looked confused. "There's something else?" Charlotte was sincere. I've told you. I'm going to make you happy. Now that we've come this far, I'll remove your worries one by one. So tell me everything that's weighing on you. Even the smallest thing. I intend to leave you no choice but to be happy. It was late in the night. In the quiet of his room, Alfonso sat on the edge of the bed, deep in thought, Charlotte's words circling in his ears. Tell me everything that's weighing on you, even the smallest thing. What exactly was Charlotte Noha hiding from him? He remembered how relentlessly she had pressed him. You're telling me the ring is your only concern? That can't be. There must be something else. Some small worry, or a matter of money. Is there nothing you want, nothing you've always wanted to try? Alfonso answered plainly, I'm content with my life as it is. Charlotte refused to give up. Truly nothing you feel is lacking? Even something as small as what to wear today. The Edward fortune is not modest, and I have never wanted for anything. My clothes are laid out by the steward. Charlotte fell silent. That explains why you always dress so tediously. But I've realized something. Alfonso, you have everything. Enough to make anyone envious. He raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment? Take it however you like. Charlotte rubbed her forehead and sighed. She had overlooked something painfully obvious. Alfonso was the head of a house that was orderly and principled to a fault. Making an unhappy man happy is far easier. You simply remove the misery and fill in what's missing. But a man who already has everything and still feels no happiness, how does anyone make him happy? Born the heir, never troubled in his studies, no difficult relatives or friends, excellent connections, no serious conflict with the crown. That's enough. You've asked plenty. My turn. How do you know about the ring? Charlotte hesitated a fraction, then answered calmly. Pure chance. I once had the opportunity to look at your mother's portrait. The ring in the painting isn't especially detailed, but I would never fail to recognize the Edward crest. Alfonso studied her, thinking privately that the answer sounded prepared in advance. He nodded. If that's what you say, I'll believe it. But answer the next question more honestly. I always answer honestly. What is it? Alfonso's gaze went deep. Charlotte, who is the man you love? That night, her answer haunted him. Charlotte had only given him a melancholy smile. That's the one thing I can't tell you. But don't worry, there won't be any scandal. Alfonso exhaled, defeated. Why did it bother him this much? That sad, almost vanishing smile kept circling in his head. Perhaps the story about the ring had been a lie as well. How much could he actually trust her? Charlotte said she recognized the ring from the late Duchess's portrait, but there was a secret behind that painting that no one else in the world knew. The ring in the portrait looked nothing like the real one. A copy, however fine, can never be identical to the original. And rather than laboring to produce a forgery, commissioning an entirely different ring to prevent misuse was by far the wiser move. It would also settle the problem of that Pyhonic snake in one stroke. He need only present a ring that looked nothing like the one the old man produced, and the world would take his word over the Lord's. But there was another absurdity gnawing at him. Why would a practiced liar go out of her way to avoid naming the man she loved? Charlotte Noha's social circle was enormous. Strangely, though, after a thorough investigation, the only person she was genuinely close to was her brother, Quincy Noha. The Noha siblings were famously devoted, and love need not mean romantic love. Very possibly the person she meant was her brother. If Charlotte wanted to avoid marriage in order to remain with her family, in Alfonso's view, Quincy was hardly a decent man, but that judgment was subjective. He still could not see what any of it had to do with his own happiness. The more he turned it over, the stranger it became. If she had simply been honest with him from the start, he could have trusted her. Remembering her advice to consider what truly weighed on him, Alfonso wondered whether Charlotte realized that the heaviest thing on his mind right now was Charlotte herself. He was not the sort of man who enjoyed pretending to be deceived, and he genuinely could not read what was in her head. Then he stopped, catching his reflection in the mirror, an open-collared shirt, far more relaxed than his usual severity. Am I really that rigid? He stepped into the corridor and immediately began scolding himself. If Barthélemy saw him like this, the man would never stop laughing. His head began to ache. No one would be awake yet. He could hurry back and change. But as he turned, he looked up with a start. Charlotte was standing at a window flooded with morning light, wearing a soft smile. I assumed you were still asleep. Good morning, Alfonso. Alfonso faltered. Why are you up so early? Charlotte sighed. I have far too much to think about. I want to know what it takes to make you happy. The task ahead isn't complicated. We marry and we recover the ring. But there's one small problem. It's slightly comical. I've run away from home. Charlotte nodded. Quincy and I fell out because he doesn't want me to marry. Her expression turned serious. Quincy will do absolutely anything to get what he wants. If we hesitate, he will interfere with this marriage. Privately, she knew Quincy had poisoned Adeline, and that in her last life he had poisoned Alfonso as well. If this continued, Alfonso would be next. So she had to recover the ring as naturally as possible, without Quincy in the way. Do you have a plan? Of course. For now, I'll stay at Edward, and we'll announce the marriage without warning at the upcoming founding festival. Alfonso was surprised. Announce it without warning? We keep it secret until then? Charlotte shook her head. We can't hide it from the world. Quincy in particular. He's probably tracked my movements already. Your vassals will pick up the scent soon enough as well. So we use that opening ourselves. Meaning what? Her smile turned sharp. Very simple. We let him walk into the trap he set himself. At that same hour at the Noha estate, Quincy was leisurely drinking wine. Sylvia, Charlotte's personal maid, stood before him and reported in alarm. The lady intends to announce her marriage to the Duke of Edward at the founding festival. She has truly turned her back on House Noha. She told me so herself. Quincy remained frighteningly calm. As I've said, their marriage is not the issue. What matters is whether she has genuinely changed. Sylvia insisted, trembling, that she was not lying. She recalled their conversation a few days before. Charlotte had thanked her for following her to Edward. But when Sylvia argued that staying too long in another family's house was improper, Charlotte had cut her off. What are you talking about? I'm getting married. Do you think I'm the sort of person who lingers in someone's home as a mere friend? I'll be announcing it soon. I'm sorry it's come to this, but Quincy will understand. Then Charlotte had delivered the final blow, cool as anything, which is to say, I am no longer of House Noha. I will be the Duchess of Edward. Do you intend to bring the lady home? Quincy took a sip of wine. No, that would be rather difficult. When father heard she was staying at Edward, he was actually delighted. If the marriage succeeds, Noha gains a priceless link to Edward, which also means Quincy had lost any reasonable pretext for dragging his sister back. So what do we do? I'm not certain. That's exactly what I'm considering. Privately, Quincy knew Charlotte was no fool. He had shaped her into the sharp creature she was. And yet that flat final look in her eyes as she said goodbye had unsettled him. Sylvia reported that Edward was in complete disarray over the marriage. Alfonso had clashed furiously with his closest retainers when he made his declaration. I have concluded every discussion with Charlotte. All of you will remember that. Sylvia added that once the news became official, the vassals would react far more violently. And Edward's security was loose enough to make watching their next moves easy. Quincy walked to the window and looked out into the dark. It seems Charlotte will go on disappointing me. If love has blinded her, if she means to abandon Noha and abandon me, then I'll have to remind her. Only we can understand each other, and only I truly care about Charlotte. Hearing that Edward's vassals were streaming into the capital, he gave Sylvia her instructions. They're crawling up here like earthworms after rain, without even an invitation. We should make use of their opposing votes. When Alfonso and Charlotte try to announce the wedding at the founding festival, the vassals' fury will guarantee a spectacle. That will be our moment. We'll draw attention elsewhere and let the Duke of Edward exhaust himself managing them. He ordered Sylvia to keep watching Edward's inner circle and to steer public opinion until Charlotte was isolated, permitting manipulation where necessary. I should have done this sooner. Charlotte is too soft-hearted. That's the problem. But there's nothing for it. Her only brother will have to act on his only sister's behalf. In the study, the air was drawn tight. The retainers made no effort to hide their objections. I still cannot support this marriage. Deciding to marry a Noha without consulting any of us? It's absurd. Zin chose to trust the Duke instead. I have no objection to his Grace's wishes. Hasn't he decided this is the best course? Yet even Zin wondered privately why the Duke was keeping everything from them. Louis was furious. It's Charlotte Noha, obviously. That woman has clouded his judgment. What else could possibly explain a decision this sudden? Hidden behind the door, Sylvia listened to all of it, Not only Louis, but almost every retainer of House Edward was against this marriage. She remembered the scene from the previous day, when Princess Sophia stormed in to confront her brother. "You seriously intend to marry Charlotte Noha?" "You lied to me." Alfonso stayed cold. "That isn't what happened. But I told you to stop interfering in my marriage." Sophia turned away, leaving a declaration behind her. "I will never recognize her as the Duchess of Edward, and I will certainly never accept a Noha as a sister-in-law. We're about to become family. Couldn't you go a little easier on me?" The words were oil on the fire. Sophia shouted, "Family? You think I'll support this marriage because you've manipulated Alfonso? You're every bit the liar and schemer the rumors say." Faced with the young princess's fury, Charlotte only sighed. It seems the princess is under a misapprehension. Sensing Sophia had a great deal more to unload, Charlotte tactfully suggested they speak privately. She told Sylvia not to bring tea and instructed her to make certain no one came near. The heavy wooden door swung shut, sealing the room off completely. Out in the corridor, Sylvia grew restless. The room was too large and the door too thick, and every sound died before it reached her. She pressed her ear to the gap and caught only broken murmuring. She was on the verge of risking an entry when a voice spoke behind her. "What are you doing there?" Sylvia spun around, cold sweat breaking out. That overwhelming presence was the Duke of Edward himself. She had not expected him back so soon. She bowed hastily and reported that the lady was speaking with Princess Sophia. "Shall I announce you?" Alfonso answered flatly. "There's no need, I'll go in myself." Sylvia stared after him as he entered the room and shut the door. He was nothing at all like the man her mistress described. That crushing presence, that dark atmosphere, those cold eyes. She wondered how her mistress could place complete trust in a man that dangerous. In fact, one of the secret tasks Quincy had given Sylvia was to quietly drive a wedge between Charlotte and the Duke. It was a familiar Quincy tactic: exploit insecurity, or wield House Noha's influence until the other party revealed their true nature. Push Charlotte away until she was isolated and had no one to lean on but him. That plan appeared to be failing. Sylvia remembered planting a rumor that Alfonso had been seen with another woman. Charlotte had merely smiled. "It's fine, let it go. If he wants to use me, I don't mind. If I can be of help to him even that way, it's worth it. Alfonso is the kindest man I have ever known." That unconditional willingness to sacrifice from a woman who trusted no one astonished Sylvia. No wonder the young master was worried. But at the coming founding festival, Edward's weakness would be fully exposed, and her mistress would return obediently to Noha the way she always had. At the founding festival, bathed in golden sunlight, the nobility buzzed with rumors about the Duke of Edward's marriage. They doubted, they speculated, they argued over whether Edward and Noha could truly join households. Lord Rena Pahonik stood among the crowd and snorted with contempt. He announced that it was entirely unacceptable, particularly since Alfonso had decided it without consulting a single vassal. Privately, he considered it the opportunity of a lifetime for open opposition. He remembered Quincy Noha's promise: simply oppose the marriage publicly and leave the rest to me. Between us, we can bring that upstart duke down. Pahonik ground his teeth, his eyes glittering. Let's see how long the boy keeps that confidence. Just then, the herald's voice rang out, announcing the arrival of the Duke of Edward. The crowd turned as one, but the man who entered was not Alfonso. It was Louis, third son of House Barthélemy. His solitary arrival left the entire assembly bewildered. Even Emperor Benoit III, reclining on his throne, frowned. "Answer me, Louis Barthélemy. Why is it not my cousin standing here, but a retainer taking his place?" Louis knelt respectfully. "Your Majesty, my master has something he wishes to convey to you." With that, he presented a letter sealed in red wax. The emperor broke the seal. His pupils contracted as he read Alfonso's plain, decisive lines. To His Majesty, I apologize for being unable to attend the ceremony in person and for conveying this by letter. As of today, through marriage, House Edward has been fully consolidated. My bride is Charlotte Noha of House Noha, and by mutual agreement, the wedding has been kept simple. We originally intended to receive Your Majesty's blessing at the founding festival, but owing to my wife's health, we were obliged to depart urgently. I therefore entrust this letter to Louis Barthélemy, currently acting head of the house, and ask Your Majesty to punish me severely for the late notice. Signed, Alfonso Linus Edward. The moment the emperor finished reading, Lord Pahonik went white. The vassals around him panicked. What? My lord, what do we do now? How do we stop a marriage that's already happened? Pionic roared. Silence, all of you. Who could have predicted the Duke would pull a stunt like this? Elsewhere, the atmosphere was no less strained. Sylvia stood shaking before a quiet, simmering rage. Every drop of color had left her face, and she could only stammer for mercy. My lord, please, this... The answer was a single cold sentence. Take her away. Now. The maid's screams echoed down the corridor as she was dragged off without mercy. But Quincy did not so much as glance back. His eyes went dark. So that's how it is. You want to play this game? She dared to announce her own marriage in a letter. But why would a man as rigid as the Duke of Edward agree to go along with it? Until today, his eyes and ears had detected nothing unusual at all. Had it moved so fast because that idiot maid fed him bad information? Or was someone hidden actually backing Charlotte? He ground his teeth. How did you pull this off, Charlotte? Elsewhere, Charlotte was laughing with delight at the thought of their faces. What a shame not to witness their expressions in person. Such short-sighted people. Alfonso looked at her with undisguised admiration. I wouldn't call them short-sighted. To me, you're the astonishing one. From Princess Sophia preparing the carriage, to Louis standing in for us on that stage. How on earth did you arrange all of it? Charlotte's lips curved. I simply did what I do best. As I said, keeping the marriage entirely secret from Quincy or anyone else was never possible. So instead of hiding, we used their attention against them. Alfonso let it slip to the vassals that the two of them would formally announce the marriage at the founding festival. That news swallowed the full attention of the opposition and of Quincy. In reality, the two had quietly registered the marriage and left in secret for Pyhonic, leaving only a letter behind, which turned everyone who came to disrupt the ceremony into a joke. And while news traveled from the capital out to the countryside, the two of them bought themselves a priceless stretch of time. Alfonso nodded. The plan was risky but entirely workable. No one was hurt, and we broke no laws. Charlotte teased him. Isn't that exactly how you like it? Alfonso studied her. Are you truly all right with skipping the wedding? It's only a 1-year contract marriage. What difference does it make? Besides, leisure isn't a luxury we have right now. Once I'm gone and you find someone you genuinely love, throw the grandest wedding you like. Saying it opened a small ache in her chest. She pushed the feeling away quickly. What mattered now was Quincy's next move. Alfonso frowned. But if we let the information leak, all attention lands on us. Do you have a way to divert everyone until the festival itself? Princess Sophia, she said, one corner of her mouth lifting. Did you know she's seeing someone as well? Didier is a knight of the Imperial Guard, born a commoner. His extraordinary swordsmanship earned him a barony. To the world, he's a mild, dependable young man. But behind that grave exterior, Didier is Princess Sophia's secret lover, a forbidden romance, and a catastrophic one if it ever reached an emperor who put the crown above all else. Sophia had gone to great lengths to keep it hidden. Then a few days before the founding festival, inside the Edward estate, Princess Sophia shouted in fury, "This is contemptible! What did you do to learn about Didier and me?" Sophia had panicked, remembering her conversation with her brother the day before. When Alfonso mentioned Didier's name, she had nearly fallen out of her chair. She rounded on Charlotte. Even my imperial brother doesn't know. So how could Alfonso have found out without someone telling him? Do you imagine this will make me support your marriage? Charlotte remained composed. I don't need the princess's approval. I'm here to help you. But Sophia, scrambling to protect her pride, said things she did not mean. I'm no different from you, a villainess. That commoner knight is just amusement. I'll drop him when I tire of him. He has no title, no land, no fortune, and he's an orphan besides. Charlotte cut her off. That's enough. Please stop saying things you don't mean. Her voice softened. You'll only wound yourself. I once belittled the man I loved out of pure selfishness. I know exactly what it costs. Sophia glared at her, eyes wet. What would you know? You have someone you love? Who? Charlotte answered without hesitation. Who else? Alfonso. Then she said it plainly. Whether the princess approves or not, we are getting married. That has nothing to do with you, correct? I know how to help you protect this love of yours. Sophia's suspicion did not fade. I still don't understand why you'd help me. Charlotte was silent. In truth, she did not know how to help Sophia in any meaningful sense. The only thing she knew for certain was how Sophia's love had ended in her last life. In that life, at the founding festival, Sophia had suddenly announced her marriage and fled with Didier. That reckless act had enraged the emperor. He ordered Didier executed at any cost and Sophia brought back alive. The escape ended in a bloodbath, with Sophia throwing herself in front of the arrow meant for Didier and dying in his arms. Sophia's death had nothing to do with Charlotte, but losing her had shattered Alfonso completely. That was what weighed on her. Back in the present, Charlotte laid out her terms. Announcing the marriage without warning is my idea. Help me with one thing, and I will make certain you're allowed to marry Sir Didier. Sophia stared at her. So you have your own agenda after all. Naturally, the man I love is Alfonso, not you, Your Highness. After a moment's hesitation, Sophia agreed. Very well, tell me what you need. That quiet alliance produced an audacious plan. Hearing it, even Alfonso was astonished. So the help you asked of Sophia was swapping carriages inside the imperial palace? Charlotte smiled. Exactly. Using the ducal carriage would have been spotted immediately. Swapping them inside the palace during the founding festival is a flawless plan, isn't it? So far, everything had gone beautifully. Even Louis grasped the plan faster than I expected. What did you do to him? Charlotte answered easily. Nothing so elaborate, just a small trade. She had used exactly the gift Louis had coveted for years, a limited edition 25th anniversary stuffed bear, to purchase his cooperation. Charlotte remarked that his retainers genuinely cared about him. If you'd told them about the ring, you'd have had far more options. But Alfonso brushed it off. He would tell them once the ring was recovered. Until then, the burden was his alone. Charlotte watched him thoughtfully. She understood perfectly that this was how Alfonso showed the people around him he cared. He always shouldered every duty and every wound by himself. It was that nature that had cost him 10 years of his youth in the field for the emperor. She said quietly, "And what about me? Does that mean I'm allowed to share the weight with you?" Alfonso hesitated. That's part of our contract, isn't it? Does it bother you? Charlotte smiled softly. No. I only wanted to confirm it. For a man like Alfonso, who never asked anything of the people he treasured, framing the ring as a contractual obligation would spare him the guilt. It was the clearest proof he regarded her as an equal, like anyone else. She liked that safe distance. There was no sense giving away feelings to someone who would be gone soon enough. Alfonso frowned, faintly displeased. That hardly sounds like something to say just after a wedding. If you leave, where will you go? There is a place I'd like to see. If I can, Devon Lake. Of course, going alone is a little lonely. Something shifted in Alfonso's eyes. You mean the place where we met again? He hesitated. Would it be all right if I came with you? Charlotte turned, startled. What? To Devon Lake? I mean, have you already made plans to go with someone else? He looked at her, absolutely sincere. The next time, why don't you come to Devon Lake with me? In her last life, Alfonso had once invited her to Devon Lake in spring. She had asked him jealously whether the trip with Lady Laveris had been enjoyable. He had answered gently that it was nothing of the kind, only that he remembered her saying she loved the lake there. That single sentence had set her heart racing. Devon Lake in spring was called the goddess's teacup. The thought of walking there beside him had once made her smile like a fool. Then the tragedy came, and Alfonso never saw that spring at all. The place he had first wanted to share with her became a wound she carried for the rest of her life. And now his words rang out like her old dream returning. Then why don't we go to Devon Lake together? Our contract runs a year, so I thought a trip just before the divorce would suit us well. When she asked awkwardly why he wanted to come, he answered evenly. Didn't you say going alone would be lonely? Consider it my return for your coming to Pahonic with me. I confess I feel some reluctance about going there alone. Even in her last life, Alfonso had never once admitted a reluctance or a personal preference to her. Are you afraid of a cold reception? Alfonso only frowned. That isn't the issue. You'll see soon enough. The carriage had barely stopped in front of Pahonic Castle, when a furious scream tore the air apart. Get out! You would let that filthy Edward set foot inside Pahonic Castle? I will not have it. Charlotte and Alfonso watched a white-haired old woman swing her cane, raging. Because of House Edward, our Yvonne is dead. Let go of me. That Edward deserves to die. A woman hurried over to apologize. As you can see, my mother's health is poor. Charlotte's face fell. So this was why Alfonso had been reluctant to come alone. "Alfonso, why didn't you tell me about this?" The woman apologizing was Chloe Pyhonic, daughter of the old woman Josephine, sister to Rena Pyhonic, and the current head of House Pyhonic. In the drawing room, the Knight Zin explained to Charlotte the relationship between the late Duchess Yvonne and House Pyhonic. Lady Yvonne had belonged to a maternal branch of Edward. When Charlotte asked how the late Duchess had died, Zin lowered his voice. On hearing that the previous Duke had suddenly passed, Lady Yvonne rushed from Pyhonic back to Edward. That was when the fatal carriage accident occurred, which was why, to old Josephine, House Edward had killed the Duchess outright. Charlotte considered. An accident was an accident, and it was easy enough to understand a confused old woman's rage. But the cold, dismissive hostility of Chloe Pyhonic, the current head, was deeply out of place. From the very first greeting, Chloe had made her distaste plain and pushed them to leave before Rena returned. Seeing Alfonso go off to survey the grounds alone, Charlotte decided to act on her own. At that same hour in the castle garden, Chloe Pyhonic walked with her thoughts in disarray. She could not understand why both the Duke and Duchess of Edward had turned up here so suddenly, least of all to discuss the ring. Yvonne's son had grown up this much already. He resembled Yvonne so uncannily that a moment ago she had almost reached out to take his hand without thinking. That was precisely why she had always avoided meeting the boy. Then a small, choking sob broke the quiet. Chloe looked over, startled, and found Charlotte weeping. Seeing her, Charlotte hurriedly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. "Forgive me, you shouldn't have had to see that. Everyone at Pyhonic has been kind. It's only that I was forced into this marriage. Married life is so suffocating that I—" Before she could finish, Chloe rushed forward and gripped her shoulders, eyes wide. "What did you say? You're telling me the Duke of Edward forced you to marry him?" Rage flared in Chloe's eyes. "This is outrageous. How can a house with all that power and privilege coerce an unwilling woman into marriage?" The violence of that reaction startled even Charlotte. Could the old Duke of Edward have forced her sister Yvonne into marriage the same way? The marriage of the previous Duke of Edward had been, from its first day, a mistake beyond repair. Alfonso's mother, Yvonne, had never wanted to set foot inside that house. But because the old Duke loved her with a consuming intensity, he used his power to force her into becoming his wife. After the wedding, to escape the suffocation of it, Yvonne left the estate constantly, sometimes for Pyhonic, sometimes to visit the Empress, her closest friend. And in a society that lives on gossip, smoke means fire. When Yvonne conceived and gave birth to Alfonso, the cruel speculation about the child's blood began. Alfonso was born with silver hair, the mark of royal lineage, but his eyes were the same color as his mother's, which only deepened the doubts about who his father truly was. The emperor himself denied it publicly, but once suspicion takes root among the nobility, it never dies. Alfonso's very existence became a symbol of that doubt, and it was that doubt that drove his parents' marriage to a horrifying end. Back in the present, in the dark woods of Pyhonic, a knight reported to Alfonso after sweeping the entire area. Every lead from the locals was identical to what they had found 10 years earlier. The knight asked hesitantly, "Your Grace, is there some question about the late Duchess's death?" Alfonso's eyes went dark, exactly as he had suspected. If the ring was never recovered at the scene of the accident, it could not have been misplaced during the cleanup. The ring had been deliberately hidden at Pyhonic from the very beginning. He wanted to search openly, but that would alert the vassals that something was wrong. The more he thought, the more thoroughly it closed in. What had driven his mother to leave Pyhonic and race back to the capital in the middle of the night? In Alfonso's memory, his father collapsing and begging his mother still played with perfect clarity. "Yvonne, please tell me it isn't true. If you say the word, I will believe you. Please, say something." But in answer to that pitiful pleading, the woman only stayed silent, watching him with eyes of pure ice. She had deliberately planted the doubt in her husband and left him to be devoured by it. In front of their small son, his father shouted himself hoarse. One answer, just one. It was the only revenge she had against the man who had forced her into a loveless marriage. And to the very last, his mother never opened her mouth. In his memory, she gathered him gently into her arms. "Alfonso, don't worry. You are certainly Edward's son. That is exactly why I treasure you. You will grow up to look just like your father." Her hand, wearing the jade ring, stroked her son's face tenderly, while her words fell like a curse. "So never let anyone come too close to you, Alfonso. Never." She leaned close to his ear and whispered, "If I have one final wish, it is that you never become like your father." I would sooner die than watch that happen. And in the end, that mother died exactly as she wished. She was killed in a carriage accident racing back to the capital the moment she heard her husband was dead. To this day, Alfonso still could not understand why she'd been in such a hurry. But of one thing he was certain. That tragedy had left a scar on his life that would never fade. He closed his hand around the jade ring on his finger. To him, that painful past was simply a weight he had to carry, not something shameful to be hidden. So why, today of all days, could he not bring himself to tell her about it? Charlotte had looked at him then with real pain in her face. "Are you all right?" After Josephine was led away and Chloe taken to rest, she had spoken gently. "Now I understand why you were reluctant to come to Pyhonic. Yvonne was the late Duchess's name, wasn't it? Whatever happened here, I still cannot understand why they would treat you this way. Whatever it was certainly not your fault." Alfonso had stared at her. For the first time in his life, someone was genuinely worried about him, and it moved through him like an unfamiliar warmth. He asked quietly, "Charlotte, are you worried about me?" She looked up at him. "I have no intention of letting this end here." Alfonso went still. Her gentle promise and that radiant smile as she said she would remove everything that made him unhappy set his heart pounding. It was the first time he had ever felt ashamed of showing weakness in front of another person. And out of fear of being pitied, he let the chance to correct his own lie slip away. He hid his painful past, and then hid his sincerity behind a stupid joke. Alfonso was furious with himself. He had not imagined he could be this pathetic. The moment he returned to the castle, he promised himself he would speak to Charlotte properly. He told the knights to prepare to return to Pyhonic Castle so they could discuss the next steps and hear her opinion. Just then, hooves came pounding up the path. Zin came racing in. "Your Grace, something serious has happened." Alfonso frowned. "Zin, why are you here instead of guarding Charlotte?" Zin, barely able to breathe, delivered the news. "The lady has been accused of masterminding a theft." Everyone froze, eyes wide. In Charlotte's guest room, the Pyhonic servants were tearing through every corner and turning out her clothes. Chloe leveled the accusation. "Do you still intend to deny it? My servant saw everything. I even tried to comfort you." Charlotte stood with her arms folded, eyes cold. "I do of course treasure your comfort, Lady Pyhonic. Which is precisely why I haven't objected to being branded a thief on the word of one of your maids." Chloe's expression changed. What did you say?" Hurried footsteps sounded in the corridor. The door flew open and Alfonso strode in. His gaze was ice. "I heard my wife was being accused of theft and came at once. You will explain to me exactly what is happening here, Lady Pyhonic." Charlotte looked up at him and asked sweetly, "Alfonso, you've come. Is your investigation finished?" He nodded. "I've confirmed everything I needed to." Chloe stepped forward to explain. "Your Grace, I am mistress of this castle, and I am simply trying to catch a thief. A diamond necklace vanished from my room today, and my personal maid saw your wife slipping out of that room at exactly that hour. No one may infringe upon my authority," Alfonso cut in. "Of course no one infringes upon Pyhonic's authority, but let me ask you one question. Have you found the missing item?" Chloe stammered. "Not yet, but it's only a matter of time." His eyes burned. "You had better find it, unless you'd rather pay with your life for insulting my wife." Chloe trembled under the killing pressure radiating off the young duke. Alfonso struck again, coldly. "Pyhonic is a vassal house of Edward. I have never heard of a vassal presuming to search the belongings of their liege's family, and certainly never of one openly accusing their liege. To make your search easier, my wife and I will step aside. However, if you cause a disturbance of this magnitude and fail to find what was taken, the responsibility is entirely yours, Lady Pyhonic." He turned and led Charlotte firmly toward the door. "I hope my wife's judgment of your conduct proves genuinely merciful." Alfonso kept hold of her hand and walked her down the corridor. Charlotte looked at him and could not stop a small laugh escaping. Alfonso blinked. "Why are you laughing? You know my reputation, and you still hope I'll be merciful? I never knew you could be sarcastic. You aren't a gentle, kind-hearted man at all, are you?" He turned his face away, embarrassed. "I only said what needed saying." Charlotte looked at him with something soft in her eyes. She remembered the first ball they attended together in her last life, and how warmly he had held her hand then too. A memory surfaced of an incident at Lady Ellen Harris's birthday party. That day, Ellen had publicly accused Charlotte of stealing her necklace. Even as Charlotte calmly pointed out that the maid Lucy had also been present, Ellen blindly defended the girl, screeching that Charlotte was the villainess of manhwa and a habitual thief. Charlotte's mouth had gone thin and cold. She slapped the maid Lucy hard enough to leave a mark. Then she answered flatly, "I'm punishing her for failing to look after her mistress's belongings. You call me a thief. What evidence do you have that I took anything?" The nobles around them began whispering vicious things. Charlotte's hands had tightened. She was long since accustomed to contempt, but being thrown away like a worn-out shoe by someone she had considered a friend still hurt enough to choke her. At that moment, Alfonso had stepped forward. He cut the Harris mother and daughter off coldly, taking Charlotte's hand firmly. "That is enough, Lady Harris. Shall we discuss the price of calling my wife a thief? Since when is accusing a guest on the strength of vague evidence acceptable? Charlotte is my wife and the mistress of House Edward. No one may treat her with disrespect. The thief that day turned out to be the maid Lucy after all." Sitting in the room, Alfonso let out a long sigh. He looked at her, serious. "Why did you sit there and take an accusation like that?" "Don't endure slander like that again." Charlotte cut in. "Hold on, Alfonso. Do you think I'm entirely innocent?" He startled. "Are you telling me you aren't?" "I didn't steal anything. I am not the necklace thief. I only searched Lady Pahonic's room in secret. But since I took nothing, that hardly counts as a crime, does it?" Alfonso pressed a hand to his forehead and exhaled in defeat. "Charlotte, you are—" "I have nothing left to say to you. Let me get this straight. You searched Chloe Pahonic's room in order to investigate her," Charlotte explained calmly. "I meant to work my way toward her gradually, but she invited me into her room herself. While you were away, I met Chloe in the garden. She wept, then invited me in for tea. She was the one who opened the subject, declaring that your father, Victor Edward, was the worst husband alive. It was both deft and remarkably careless. From that, I confirmed two things. Chloe is not the schemer she appears to be, and she is being used by Rena. Chloe clearly resents Edward, but that grudge doesn't align at all with Rena's hunger for power. She's a typical country noblewoman, living in a world where the Lord holds every card, with no need for the political games of the capital. If she were truly in league with her brother, she would never have been that careless. So there were only two possibilities. Either Chloe knows nothing of Rena's scheme, or she is connected to the ring." Alfonso sighed helplessly. "And that's your reason for searching her room without permission?" Charlotte was unbothered. She stepped out to fetch more tea. "Why wouldn't I? The risk was minimal. Chloe lives by her emotions, and people like that always keep mementos of the past. Diaries, portraits, keepsakes. With any luck—" Alfonso frowned, worried. "Did it not occur to you that without luck, you'd have become an actual thief?" Charlotte smiled, sharp as glass. "Why imagine the worst when I knew I wouldn't be caught? Only amateurs get spotted while prowling." "Alfonso, do you know what I found in that room?" "You found the ring?" "Something very close to it. More precisely, I found the trail. It was hardly hidden at all. I opened the drawer beneath her desk, and there it was. A bundle of letters exchanged between your mother and Chloe Pahonic." Charlotte laid out her plan decisively. This time she would not return to the capital on her own. She would find the Duchess's ring first. They had to act before Rena returned. Alfonso frowned, uneasy. "Are you planning to throw yourself into danger again, the way you did last time? Rena will be back within a week. Wouldn't it be more sensible to wait for him?" Charlotte brushed it aside. "Waiting only complicates things. There's no need for you to try to shield me." Alfonso stared. "If I understand you correctly, you're asking me to treat you as an expendable piece on the board," Charlotte answered without inflection. "That's putting it harshly. I only mean I'm willing to be a piece you can afford to sacrifice." The plainness of it landed on his heart like ice water. "You pity me, and yet you treat my concern for you as meaningless." Alfonso stood, his voice wounded. "You have a real gift for making a person feel like a fool." Charlotte started and called after him. "Alfonso, where are you going?" "Enough, I don't want to talk any further." Walking the dark corridor alone, his thoughts tore at one another. Her words kept circling in his head. "I've wagered everything on you, Alfonso. I want you to be happy." But when he heard her wish him happiness so earnestly, his chest closed. Suffocation and unease and confusion took hold of him. He knew perfectly well she had come for her own reasons, and that the moment she believed he was happy, she would leave. There was nothing here that could hold a villainess like her. Even Sophia, before climbing into the carriage, had told him Charlotte was genuinely sincere with him. Charlotte Noha, a woman cruel and cold to everyone alive. So why did she reserve that particular gentleness for him alone? If he never found happiness, if that would keep her at his side, if she went on being gentle, went on worrying, and never let go of him. In his mind, Alfonso pulled her image tight against him, desperate to keep her forever. He stopped in the corridor and leaned back against the wall, sighing bitterly at his own twisted obsession. Damn it all. I think I've just knotted the rope to hang myself with. In the empty room, Charlotte watched him walk out, stunned. His voice had been sharp, but the expression he wore as he left felt strangely familiar. The thing between them had clearly changed. He no longer hated her the way he once had. A memory from her last life surfaced. One night, long after the wedding, he had asked her whether his concern for her was truly unbearable. Yes, she had said, I hate it. She had made herself as hard as she could, because she believed he loved Adeline and she refused to accept affection given out of duty. But with a look of open displeasure, he had only frowned harder and said coldly, even if you hate it, you will endure it. I am enduring you as well. Whatever it is you dislike, I do not intend to abandon a husband's obligations. Everything would be easier if he simply didn't care about me. So what had forced that expression onto his face? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. The door opened and Chloe Pahonik walked in, her face bloodless, her whole body shaking. What brings you here, Lady Pahonik? Chloe bowed, stammering. I apologize, Duchess Edward. I should not have accused you so rashly. I am truly sorry. Charlotte leaned back in her chair at her leisure, one corner of her mouth curving. So you didn't find the necklace among my things? She knew perfectly well that after Alfonso's threat, Chloe would have turned over every stone. And since she had never taken it, how could it possibly have surfaced? The missing diamond necklace was a priceless Pahonik heirloom. Chloe had assumed Charlotte stole it in retaliation for Pahonik hiding the ring. She had been certain, since Charlotte was the only outsider present, and there was the maid's testimony besides. But when the maid came running in to report that they had searched everywhere, even under the beds, and found nothing, Chloe's knees had nearly given out. Not only had she damaged their standing with Edouard, her family's treasure was genuinely gone without a trace. Reclining comfortably on the sofa, Charlotte dismissed her coldly. I have nothing further to say. Please leave my room, Lady Pahonik. Chloe stepped forward stiffly, then dropped to her knees on the floor, sobbing. Duchess Edward, please. Have mercy on me just this once. I know I was wrong. Say I slandered you if you like, but I have to get that necklace back. Charlotte looked down at the woman kneeling at her feet. You're making a scene over something precious to you? If it matters that much, what will you trade to get it back? Chloe answered instantly. If it's compensation, I can pay you a great deal. Charlotte's lip curled. House Pahonik's finances hardly compare to Edward's, or even Noha's. You'd do better finding someone else. Chloe clutched at her skirt. My lady, I misspoke. I'll do anything. Anything you want. Only say the word. Anything, is it? Very well. She drew out a sheet of paper without hurry. Sign here and I'll help you. Chloe stared, bewildered. What is this? What else? It's the signature line of a contract. Chloe hesitated, seeing the entire body of the document covered. But how can I sign when I don't know the terms? Charlotte rose and turned away. Didn't you say you'd do anything? Or is the necklace not that important after all? In that case, I won't press. Chloe panicked. No, my lady, I'll sign it. Then you'll return the necklace, won't you? Charlotte raised her brows. Return it? I told you I never took it. This is your last chance. Do you trust me completely or not? Chloe squeezed her eyes shut and set her jaw. Fine. I won't doubt you again. She signed quickly, telling herself the necklace was all that mattered now. As for the ring, she could simply deny everything. There was no proof. Charlotte took the signed contract and smiled, satisfied. Very good, that's settled. Now may I know what I've just signed? At least show me the terms. Charlotte cheerfully handed the paper back. Certainly, see for yourself. Chloe unfolded it and nearly fainted. Apart from the signature sitting alone at the bottom, the entire sheet was blank. Chloe went white with horror. A blank contract? Charlotte's mouth curved into a wicked little smile. Didn't you say you'd do anything to get that necklace back? What I write on it, I'll decide later. For now, let's go and find your necklace. Chloe wondered aloud why she was focused on the thief rather than searching the house. Charlotte pointed out that after all that commotion, the thief would be on guard and would have erased every trace. But given that the necklace was an ancient family treasure, she had reached one conclusion. This thief was absolutely not an amateur. Most ordinary thieves only take jewelry that's easy to move. But an ostentatious historical treasure like that necklace is something no ordinary jeweler would touch. The thief would have to sell it on the black market, which meant they had a buyer lined up before they ever made the move. Charlotte pressed her on whether anything had gone missing before. Chloe shook her head firmly, insisting this was the first time, since the servants here were all loyal and good-hearted. Charlotte's lips curved in mockery. Naturally, with a mistress as innocent and gullible as you, why wouldn't they behave beautifully? In an environment leaking that many openings, how could greed not be tempted? Chloe fired back. What did you just say? Is there something wrong with trusting the people close to you? Charlotte answered evenly. I never said it was wrong. Trust is admirable, right up until you're betrayed. I only find your blind trust absurd. There are certainly other valuables missing that you know nothing about. Chloe refused to accept it. How could things disappear without anyone noticing? Charlotte struck straight at the weak point. If the owner has no idea, how would anyone find out? And there is someone here who fits that description perfectly. Someone old and confused enough that losing a few possessions would go unnoticed. Josephine Pionic. Go and check your mother's belongings. You'll find the losses don't stop at 1 or 2 pieces. The words hit Chloe like a blow. She rushed out of the room, shouting for the servants to go and search Josephine's rooms at once. Charlotte watched her hurry away, thinking that this estate was about to be thrown into another uproar entirely. She lifted the blank contract bearing Chloe's signature. A blank page with a signature on it is an extremely dangerous thing. It meant she could bend Chloe to whatever shape she chose. What should I write here? Chloe's defiance today had been genuinely disrespectful. The Charlotte of her last life would have used every method she had to break the woman and make her pay dearly. But everything had changed the moment she found that bundle of letters on Chloe's desk. In the brief window while Chloe was out of the room, Charlotte had skimmed the letters the late Duchess Yvonne had written to her. Through that handwriting, she came to understand more about Yvonne, the woman whose place she now held. The letters were full of bitterness. Yvonne wrote about how much she hated her husband, how bleak and miserable life in the capital was, and how she resented even the child who had chained her inside that cage. From the time he was very small, Alfonso had been an extraordinarily obedient child, never fussing or crying the way other children his age did. Ordinary parents would have been proud of a child that well-behaved and self-sufficient. For Yvonne, it was the opposite. Alfonso's face was always grave, cold, and completely empty. And every time she saw her husband's face surfacing in her son's, she shuddered with horror. The guilt of being unable to love her own child gnawed at Yvonne day after day, and in time that torment curdled into hatred, creating a bleak, closed loop of tragedy. When her loathing for Victor reached its peak, she stared at the ring and screamed at it. Disappear. Get out of my sight. The obsession grew so severe she no longer had the courage to look her own son in the face. A carriage rolled hurriedly through the empty night, carrying the last letter that poor woman ever wrote. If I take this ring away with me to Pionic, Victor will certainly come after me. So I want you to keep the ring for me. If I tell him I lost it, he won't be able to force me back to the capital just to look for it. Perhaps it would be better if I never returned it at all. Through those final lines of Yvonne's, Charlotte understood at last why they hated Alfonso so much and where the ring had gone. Charlotte set her pen against the blank contract. She had meant to write a demand that Pionic surrender the ring. But if she used raw authority to trample the only relatives Alfonso had left, the connection between Edward and Pionic would break completely. And then would Alfonso be left carrying all that loneliness alone again, with the same dark eyes he'd had in her last life? She sighed softly. The real problem was never the ring. It was this family's unhealed wound. Even after she was gone, Alfonso would still need people beside him. Keeping this husband of hers alive had never once been simple. The next morning, Chloe came rushing into her room. My lady, you are completely right. But what do I do now? We've questioned the maids, and we still can't tell which of the 3 is the thief. Charlotte answered easily, I can help you. But you understand I won't be returning that contract. Chloe trembled. What? What do you intend to write on it? Threatening me won't do you any good. I came here originally for something that vanished more than 10 years ago, and I intended to force you to find it. But I've changed my mind. Chloe braced herself, certain the demand would be something even worse than the ring. Instead, Charlotte simply held up the contract. This isn't about recovering an object, so let's make a trade instead. I will find your missing necklace. In exchange, Lady Pyhonic, you will stop hating Alfonso. Chloe was thrown. What kind of condition is that? When have I ever hated the Duke of Edward? Charlotte turned her cold gaze on the lie and crushed it. You mean to tell me you've never despised him? Let's be honest with one another. I know exactly how much you resent Edward. But the cruelty of those years belongs entirely to the late Duke Victor Edward. It has nothing whatsoever to do with Alfonso. Does it? Charlotte's voice dropped. I used to envy Alfonso. From the outside, he seemed to have everything. Royal blood, sole heir, loyal cousins, retainers who revered him. While I never even saw my birth mother's face and spent my whole life as a puppet of House Noha. So it never once occurred to me that he might have his own private wounds. I judged another person's happiness carelessly and envied their life. That is genuinely something to be ashamed of. So I am asking you, stop hating Alfonso. Chloe was at a loss. Why would you do this? Didn't you say this was a marriage you never wanted? Don't you hate Edward too? Charlotte smiled gently. I wasn't lying. This is a marriage I never wanted. But that doesn't mean I can't wish my husband happiness. He is not a wicked man. If he truly were cruel, half the people in that room would have died the moment you searched my belongings. Charlotte went on coolly. Have you forgotten what people used to call me? The villainess of Noha isn't a title anyone wears for decoration. Half of those who opposed me died. The other half were made to watch, so they'd learn to be afraid. That is real cruelty. Not a soft-hearted man like Alfonso, who carries his predecessor's sins although he did nothing wrong. Chloe wavered, her eyes exhausted. How can you say it isn't his fault? If the Duke of Edward had come to Pyhonic even once, just once, I would have acted differently. I tore myself apart 100 times wondering whether honoring Yvonne's last wish was the right thing to do. In the end, I confided in my brother Reina, and he told me that the current Duke of Edward was no different from that vile Victor. A man who wouldn't even set foot where his own mother drew her last breath. Chloe's voice shook with grievance. Reina was right. My mother means nothing to him. The proof is that he only came here when he needed the ring back. How am I supposed to forgive someone like that? Charlotte brushed it away. Do you know that Alfonso wasn't even of age at the time? He had to bury both his parents while he was still a boy. And the moment he inherited, the emperor shipped him off to war for 10 years. You know better than anyone how hard it is for a young head of house to defend his family alone, don't you? Chloe protested that it was only an excuse, then spilled her hatred out. No one carrying Victor Edward's blood could ever be a good man. Victor was cold, brutal, arrogant enough to trample anyone's feelings. Yvonne died because of him. I'm not asking about blood, Charlotte said, dismantling the argument. I'm asking about what you have seen and felt with your own eyes. Has Alfonso ever once reminded you of that cruel old duke? Chloe froze, then lowered her head. No. He is a courteous young man, very like Yvonne. Then set your prejudice aside, Lady Pyhonic. I refuse to stand by and watch Alfonso suffer any longer for what House Pyhonic has done. You're saying the Duke of Edward has been suffering because of us? My brother Reina is a loyal vassal of Edward. He even went up to the capital to discuss the ring. At that, Charlotte suddenly laughed. The mockery in it split the tension in the room. Reina Pyhonic, a loyal vassal? He's a clown using his own dead cousin to grab at power. Chloe shook. What did you say? Do you know Reina has deliberately been driving a wedge between you and Edward? He intercepted every piece of news before it reached you and twisted the truth to serve his own ambition. It appears I'll have to tell you exactly what your brother has been doing in the capital. Days later at the estate, Zin delivered a report to Alfonso about the strange happenings at Pyhonic Castle. He explained that the theft of Josephine's belongings was not the first incident. The servants whispered that she had lost things many times, and that most recently an extremely important ring had vanished. Zin added that Lady Pyhonic had been in a complete panic over that loss. He insisted firmly that Charlotte was not the culprit, and declared angrily that if the woman failed to apologize to the Duchess after an insult that groundless, then defending the Duchess's honor was the duty of a knight like himself. He had already challenged House Pionic to a duel. Hearing this, Alfonso fell into thought. He was beginning to understand what Charlotte had been driving at. The next morning he found her. However tangled his thoughts were, he bowed his head and admitted fault first. "Charlotte, about yesterday, I apologize. If I upset you, please forgive me." But she only waved it off and gave him a gentle warning. "I'm fine, don't dwell on it. Remember one thing. Whatever rumors spread from here on, don't worry about them. Everything will work out." Those easy words only made him feel more powerless. He cursed himself for failing to tell her in time that he was not angry with her. Lost in thought, Alfonso rose to leave, and the door burst open. A knight came rushing in. "Your Grace, please come out immediately. Rena Pionic has returned." Rain came down in sheets. Rena's carriage rolled to a stop. He was still seething from being cornered and berated by his own allies at the founding festival. "Pionic, how do you intend to fix this? You promised everything would go to plan once you reached the capital." "I'm thoroughly disappointed in you," Pionic roared back. "Be quiet, all of you. Are you telling me it's my fault the Duke never even showed up?" Cornered, he turned to dump the blame on Charlotte, seeing Quincy Noha standing nearby. "Your sister is the one who started this whole mess." "Quincy Noha, how do you intend to compensate me?" Quincy answered only with a small, merciless smile. "Compensate you? You couldn't even manage your own part, and you dare stand here barking in front of me? A man blinded by greed like you is nothing but an insect walking itself into the blade. Even as your head leaves your shoulders, you still won't understand that you weighed out your own flesh. Count yourself fortunate I don't take your head right here, Rena Pionic." Swallowing his humiliation, Rena returned to the castle, telling himself that as long as he held the late Duchess's ring, he could still turn everything around. But the moment he stepped inside, Chloe met him, ashen. "Brother, both the heirloom necklace and Yvonne's ring have been stolen." Rena went rigid, his eyes bulging with shock. "What did you say?" Chloe explained frantically that the maids were being investigated, but that she was more worried about the necklace being sold on the black market. Rena bellowed like a maddened animal. "You idiot! Who cares about that worthless necklace? The ring is what matters. Without the ring, how am I supposed to force the Duke of Edward's hand?" Chloe's legs nearly gave out. What are you saying? What about Yvonne's dying wish? You told me the ring couldn't be returned because of her wish." Rena sneered. "Her wish? The dead are dead. With that ring, I could live in splendor in the capital, and swallowing Edward whole would be effortless." Chloe collapsed inside. Every ounce of faith she had placed in her own brother evaporated. She understood bitterly that she had been manipulated into hating an innocent child. Chloe cried out in fury. "I believed you. I pushed the Duke away. I had no idea he was sent to war the moment he inherited. I left that child alone in an empty house. You told me he was exactly like that brutal Victor. All of it was your lie? Yvonne means nothing to you at all. Then what on earth have I been doing all this time?" Rena scrambled to recover. "Chloe, focus on finding Yvonne's ring first. There's no need for that. You'd do better keeping those secrets to yourself." Alfonso's cold voice cut in from the doorway. He and Charlotte walked in without hurry. Charlotte smiled proudly and raised the hand wearing the previous Duchess's blue diamond ring. "Who would have guessed you'd confess every crime with your own mouth? The wailing of a defeated man is always so pitiful." Rena Pionic stood frozen at the sight of the blue diamond on her finger, the keepsake of the late Duchess Yvonne. Alfonso spoke coldly. "You deliberately concealed an Edward heirloom and used it as a pretext to incite the vassals. That ring passes only to the Duchess, and yet you recognized it at a glance." Rena stammered. Wait, there's been a misunderstanding." Alfonso gave him no room. By the authority of the Lord of House Edward, as of this moment, Rena Pionic is stripped of the headship of Pionic and placed under arrest. He turned to Chloe. "As acting head, do you consent, Lady Pionic?" Chloe bit her lip. "I will abide by my lord's decision." Rena howled as the knights dragged him away. "Chloe, how can you do this to me, you ungrateful wretch?" But the door of the cell slammed shut in his face. Chloe bowed very low before Alfonso, apologizing sincerely for her own recklessness. In truth, all of this was the Duchess's idea. Alfonso blinked. "Charlotte's?" Chloe explained the entire delicate trap Charlotte had laid. She had suggested spreading a rumor that a ring was among the stolen items. If Rena were truly innocent, he would have focused solely on the heirloom necklace. But driven by his own black ambition, he panicked the instant he heard the ring was missing. That greed was his own confession. Alfonso frowned. But how did Charlotte come to have the ring? Why was something hidden all these years at Pyhonic in her hands? Chloe sighed and admitted it. I gave the ring to her myself. She promised that if Rena truly had no ill intent, she would give it back. Chloe bowed her head full of regret. I was imprisoned by my own stubbornness about the past. Yvonne's death was never your fault. How foolish of me, always looking for someone to blame. If the Duke of Edward is genuinely a good man, then congratulations on finding a remarkable wife. If the two of you treat one another honestly, you will surely be happy together. Alfonso answered quietly, I intend to do my best. Soon afterward, the missing necklace was recovered and returned to Pyhonic. Every difficulty with the vassals was settled. In the knight's quarters, the room buzzed. Lately, the Duke of Alfonso's face had grown darker by the day. Since the necklace incident, he had been skipping breakfast and even avoiding tea with the Duchess. While everyone puzzled over it, the Knight Arnold folded his arms and spoke up, exasperated. You fools, are you genuinely that naive? Arnold declared it confidently. He's fallen in love. The knights muttered in disbelief, since everyone knew this marriage was nothing but a forced political arrangement. But Arnold shook his head and smiled. He remembered the night the necklace was stolen. That evening, he had walked into the study to report that the Duchess was looking for him. And the ordinarily unflappable Duke had put his head in his hands, thoroughly rattled, and told Arnold to go find out what she wanted on his behalf because he was extremely busy. Watching the Duke fold himself into a stack of paperwork, Arnold knew perfectly well he was simply hiding, because his heart had been taken over entirely. The Lord of Edward suffering an absurdly one-sided love. But Arnold had noticed something stranger still. The Duchess had lately been keeping her distance from the Duke on purpose. Why? She had always given him everything, ready to walk into danger or trade her own life without a second's hesitation. Arnold shivered, remembering her deep green eyes, sharp as a serpent's. They softened when they looked at Alfonso, and would tear apart anyone who stood in her way, vassal or noha alike. A woman that fiercely devoted to the point of madness could never sit still while the Duke was miserable. Arnold decided he would go to the Duchess himself and get to the bottom of it. At that same hour, in a darkened room, Charlotte was doubled over coughing. Each fit tore at her throat. The handkerchief in her hand was soaked through with dark blood. She knew she could not put it off any longer. It was time to find the alchemist Gabriel. Gabriel, a man arrogant enough to take the name of an archangel. His age, his origins, even his real name were complete unknowns. In her last life, wandering the world searching for a way to save Alfonso, Charlotte had encountered him disguised as a traveling merchant. The dark wooden cabin, the mysterious cloak, and above all those strangely glowing golden eyes had burned themselves into her memory. After turning back time, she had people searching relentlessly, and went to that cabin herself. The place was nothing but an empty clearing with no trace of anyone. She had told herself that as long as Alfonso was saved, never finding Gabriel again would not matter. But she had not expected her body to fail this fast. The blood came more often now, and she was weaker than she had ever been in her last life. A few days earlier, right after the theft at Pyhonic was settled, the young Duke had come to find her and admitted it. I can't deny it. The problems that have troubled me for years you solve in ways no one would ever anticipate. Chloe Pyhonic told me everything, even holding a blank contract. You never coerced her. But I have one question, Charlotte. Why did you tell Chloe to stop hating me? Charlotte answered gently. Otherwise, you'd have no one left beside you. More precisely, no one who understands your circumstances. I know what happened to you. I know your mother was never a good mother to you. Alfonso went rigid with shock. The darkest secret he had always kept had been laid bare. He stammered. Since when have you known? Since I found and read the letters in Chloe's room. Don't misunderstand. I avoided mentioning it only because you once told me not to pity you. If I'd said anything, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself from trying to comfort you. Alfonso lowered his head. So that's why you said those things to Chloe. To comfort me? I am not a child anymore, and I have no need of a mother now. But you know it yourself, Alfonso. Sometimes we all need someone to open up to. If you can't share your story with a single person, it means you haven't truly connected with anyone. From where I stand, you're every bit as alone as I am. The last time after I spoke with Princess Sophia, I realized something. Even she doesn't know the real reason you're marrying. And you never told your retainers about the ring either, did you? You intended to carry all of it alone with no one understanding you at all? Alfonso turned his face away, avoiding her eyes. This isn't something you need to worry about. Charlotte sighed, defeated. I knew you'd say exactly that. She laughed at herself and spoke about her own past. I used to think precisely the way you do. I told myself I'd made it this far alone, so nothing ahead would be a problem either. Then one day I was accused of theft at the birthday party of a woman I had considered my closest friend. Social ties are discarded as fast as a worn-out pair of shoes. In that moment, I felt utterly wretched and utterly hopeless. And while she stood alone in the middle of that public humiliation, a warm hand had taken hers. It was her husband, the Duke of Edward. He had defended her in front of everyone with a single unyielding declaration. Charlotte is my wife and the mistress of House Edward. No one may treat her with disrespect. That protection had changed her life entirely. When someone finally understood me, I realized something. All that time, I had been waiting for a person who could understand me. I thought I didn't need it. It turned out I was simply very lonely. In her heart, she thought, Alfonso, I want to be the one who eases your pain. She smiled softly. So please, I don't want you to be alone anymore. Even if you feel no need for it now, who knows? Perhaps one day you will. Alfonso said quietly. If you're looking for someone who understands me, isn't that person standing right in front of me? Charlotte started and pointed at herself. Me? You mean me? That's right. You know my circumstances as well as anyone. Charlotte answered softly. I do. But once our contract ends, I'll be leaving. Alfonso objected at once. Even if you leave, is there some rule against keeping in touch? A feeling rose in Alfonso that he could not control. That selfishness had nothing to do with wanting to prolong a false marriage. Even if she left him to be with the man she truly loved and smiled at that man instead, he would be all right. But please, just don't disappear from my life entirely. Why do you comfort me like this? As though you're about to vanish forever? Alfonso's voice caught with pain. Do you hate me, Charlotte? She looked at him blankly. What? I don't understand why you would suddenly say this. You keep telling me you and I have nothing to do with one another. So why do you keep pushing me away? He whispered, helpless. If you don't hate me, then why do you always behave as though you're going to leave me for good? Charlotte flinched. Wait, hold on. You mean we should still see each other even after the divorce? Is there some reason we can't? Of course there is. You'll remarry, won't you? Your future wife would certainly not appreciate it. Alfonso sighed. I think you've misunderstood something. I have no intention whatsoever of taking another wife. Before she could recover, he stepped forward and took her hand. Put as simply as I can, Charlotte, you are the first, and you will also be the last. The sudden confession made her heart stumble. The first and the last? Me? Inwardly, Charlotte reeled, certain this had to be some disastrous misunderstanding. She remembered the days they had shared a carriage on the road to Pionic. He had kept his distance and treated her like a stranger. Her only goal was his happiness. She had never intended to go further, and she believed she had no right to. All of it was supposed to end in a quiet parting. When exactly had everything gone off course? If I'm the first and the last, then what about an heir? Alfonso answered calmly. I can adopt a child from one of the family's branches. Adopt? Do you genuinely intend to end the Edward bloodline? Alfonso said. That has been my plan since the moment I proposed to you. Why invite unnecessary complications when adoption resolves everything? Besides, I'm not the one who bears children. It isn't something you simply obtain by wanting it. Charlotte grew alarmed. If this continues, it will be the perfect excuse for the branch families and the other retainers to attack you. Why would you make a decision that reckless? Even in her last life, across 3 years of marriage, he had never once concerned himself with producing an heir. Seeing the worry on her face, Alfonso asked quietly, Charlotte, why do you care so much about the Edward bloodline? How could I not? This is your future. But haven't you only ever cared about my happiness? Charlotte sighed. You've misunderstood me. When I say I want you happy, I mean it in a much wider sense. Even if that person isn't me, I want you to live a peaceful life, free of trouble you never deserved. If you're that concerned about me, Alfonso pulled her suddenly close and murmured against her ear, then help me continue the bloodline yourself. Charlotte's face went scarlet. She shoved him away, flustered, and raised her voice to cover her embarrassment. What on earth are you saying? Stop saying ridiculous things. Embarrassed himself, Alfonso kept his composure anyway. You worry this much about my heir and yet refuse to help me produce one. How exactly am I meant to understand that?
Charlotte sighed, worn out. You know perfectly well I won't agree. This has nothing to do with what either of us wants. I simply don't want to leave any trace of myself in House Edward. My presence would only be a stain on your future marriage.
Let me say it one more time. I do not intend to marry anyone else. The future is not something anyone can predict, Alfonso. In the beginning, you never imagined you'd marry me either, did you? Life is long and you are a good man. Alfonso leaned down, his eyes full of sincerity and something close to pleading. But right now, at this moment, I am here with you. Must I really think about a future without you? Please, Charlotte, look at me. Don't think about my future, and don't think about yours. Just look at the person standing in front of you right now. If you truly want me to be happy, he cut her off, his voice absolutely steady. Then stop behaving as though you are about to leave forever. If you wish happiness for me, then I wish exactly the same for you. Charlotte's mind came apart into pieces. Every time he came closer, she felt her control slipping further. She was afraid she would misread what this was. If you want to comfort me, if you want to understand me, then let me worry about you too. The words seeped into her heart like warm water. Just a little. Could she be selfish one last time? Alfonso, but the moment she began to open up, a sudden crushing pain seized her chest. Her ribs closed in, her blood seemed to boil. In a panic, she shoved him away hard. Her face went white, and she forced out the words, "Get out!" Alfonso was stunned. Charlotte, why are you suddenly... I don't want to talk to you anymore. Get out. Now. Faced with her sudden fury, Alfonso closed his fists, his chest aching. Is what I'm asking really so difficult? Her answer was only a hard silence. He sighed and turned away, accepting it. I understand. If that's what you want. The door closed and Charlotte was alone in the empty room. She could not hold it back another second. She dropped to her knees, coughing up mouthful after mouthful of fresh blood. The fit went on and on until she was gasping in pain. When it eased, she wiped the blood from her mouth, exhausted. That was close. Her body deteriorating this much faster than the first time meant the rite was nearing completion, which meant Alfonso was very close to happiness. But if this continued, her own body would become the largest obstacle of all. Standing before the mirror, she considered her options. She had managed to avoid Alfonso since that day, but it was not a long-term solution. The real problem now was finding a way to reach Gabriel. A knock at the door broke into her thoughts. My lady, it's Arnold Joel. As he came in, she thought about the painting she had seen in her last life. If there were any lead at all, it could only be in the one place she had never searched. That landscape depicted somewhere very particular, a city famous for winding canals and structures of solid steel, the city of Dressenfang. In the quiet tea room, steam curled from a porcelain cup. Arnold lifted his cup. I don't know much about tea, so I couldn't tell you what it tastes like. But this is far more gracious hospitality than I expected. Thank you, my lady, Charlotte answered evenly. Not at all. For a loyal retainer who works tirelessly for my husband, this is simply what's owed. Arnold Joel. Of all Alfonso's knights, he was the most aggressive and the most cunning. The world spoke of the brutal strength of the man they called Edward's Hound. In the past, Charlotte had never got along with any of Alfonso's retainers. Strangely, Arnold was the only one who had never shown her open hostility. Besides, her body was in such poor condition that she had nothing left for pointless social conversation. Just as the silence became total, Arnold spoke up. My lady, I've been wondering this whole time. You haven't poisoned this tea, have you? Charlotte's eyes went cold at once. Her health was already dreadful, and now she had to sit through witless jokes. Alarmed by her expression, Arnold waved both hands and laughed nervously. No, I was only joking. He scratched his head, explaining himself. You've been staring at me this entire time. I only wanted to lighten the mood. Charlotte sighed. You really don't understand me at all. Why would I use something as convoluted as poison to kill you? Wouldn't a single thrust of a dagger be far quicker? The joke, delivered in her particular ice-cold style, sent a chill up Arnold's spine. He could only laugh weakly, promising himself never to joke with her again unless he wanted an actual blade in him. Charlotte turned serious.
So, what brings you here? It isn't official business, honestly. I was simply curious. His Grace has been in poor spirits lately. Charlotte was indifferent. I don't see what that has to do with me. Shouldn't you be fetching a doctor instead of coming here? My lady, you know perfectly well that isn't the issue. Arnold looked at her directly. I'm quite certain you're the reason. Watching my master mope about like this is not pleasant. Charlotte tilted her head. Are you asking me to go and cheer Alfonso up? Arnold waved his hands frantically. Please, no. The Duchess is hardly a court jester. His mood will recover on its own with time. He could not fathom how his master had lost his mind over a woman this cold. Charlotte cut through his thoughts. Then get to the point. Honestly, I don't quite know how to put it. I came because I genuinely can't tell what you're thinking. Then a searing pain shot through her skull and Charlotte's face twisted. The headaches were getting worse and she began to shake. Arnold said quickly, Please don't draw that dagger. I'm not joking this time. My lady, are you by any chance... Before he could finish, there was a crash. The cup fell from Charlotte's hand and shattered, followed by a fit of coughing that seemed to tear her apart. She collapsed to the floor, bringing up mouthful after mouthful of bright red blood. Her chest heaved and the blood kept coming, staining an entire corner of the room. Arnold stood there struck dumb. My lady, don't tell me. Are you saying you don't have long left? Charlotte gasped for air and wiped her mouth with a shaking hand. A little blood hardly means I'm dying. Aren't you overreacting? Looking at the pool spreading across the floor, Arnold shuddered. He raised his voice. You call that a little blood? Charlotte wiped it away, her face plainly exhausted but still composed. Honestly, I doubt I'll survive the year. It's only a chronic illness that's taken a turn. Don't make too much of it, and above all, don't tell Alfonso. Have you seen a doctor? If I hadn't, I'd be in far worse shape than this. It's an incurable illness. An ordinary physician can do nothing. At the word incurable, Arnold panicked in earnest. Then at the very least he has to know. Absolutely not. Charlotte cut him off sharply. Alfonso must never learn about this. I won't have him worrying. Is worrying really the concern here? If you won't tell him, I will. Arnold turned to go, and a blade sang. Charlotte had drawn a dagger in a single motion and set it against her own throat. Her face was hard, her jade eyes absolutely resolved. Try it. The day Alfonso learns of my illness is the day I end myself on the spot. Faced with that reckless certainty, Arnold gave in completely. Damn it. Fine, I'll keep quiet, so please put that away. Only then did Charlotte lower the blade. Arnold planted his hands on his hips, furious and helpless at once. Hell. I picked the wrong master entirely. Both of you owe me for this. He complained aloud, but inwardly he was badly shaken. An incurable illness. If Alfonso discovered it, the result would be catastrophic. His voice gentled. You can't hide this forever. Is there truly no cure at all? Charlotte lowered her lashes. There is exactly one. I know of someone who can heal me, but as you can see, my body won't let me go and find them. I need you to find that person for me. That's no trouble at all. Tell me who they are and I'll leave immediately. That is precisely the difficulty. Their name is Gabriel, though it's almost certainly an alias. And all I know about them is that they have golden eyes. Arnold's mouth fell open. Hold on. You're asking me to find a person whose real name we don't even know, somewhere on this entire continent? Fortunately, I have one lead. Charlotte drew out a rolled sheet and handed it to him. This is Dressenfang, an enormous canal city, also known as the City of Water and Swords. Ever since criminals began hiding there, the narrow alleys along the canals have turned the place into a den of chaos, and self-defense blades have become the local specialty. Take this. It's a reproduction of a painting that person once owned. Search for this landscape, and if you can, find whoever painted it. She looked him straight in the eye. That is our first thread for tracking down the hidden alchemist. The name carried softly through the room, holding every last hope she had left. Gabriel.